Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom. I'm the creator of RulingPlanets.com and Christopher Renstrom Astrology. And this time, I wanted to talk to you about Jupiter entering the zodiac sign of Leo on June 30th. So, what does Jupiter do in astrology? Jupiter has a reputation in astrology for good luck, bringing good things with it wherever it goes. It's often regarded as a sort of, cosmic Santa Claus, giving all sorts of gifts and blessings and virtues to all the lives that it touches. And of course, when Jupiter is traveling through your own zodiac sign, this is a period of time when you can expect those things to happen. But there's a little bit more going on with Jupiter than just sort of, winning the cosmic lottery. Jupiter is indeed the planet of good fortune, but Jupiter is also the planet of higher purpose. And the idea of good fortune and higher purpose are interlinked. The job of Jupiter in an astrological chart, and the job of Jupiter in the world in general, is to bring goodwill. We have a phrase which is paying it forward. And paying it forward is used in reference to the idea of a good act, doing a good deed for someone else. For instance, someone may do you a good deed out of nowhere. Maybe they give you directions, maybe they help you make change, maybe they help you with something that you're struggling with. Perhaps you're moving into an apartment and you're struggling with a heavy box, and they come on in and they help you with that heavy box and find a place for it in your apartment. So oftentimes these good deeds are done by strangers, by people we don't really know, people who just stopped and helped us out in a time of need. And so the idea of paying it forward is that you would do the same for someone else, a stranger, someone else that you don't know, someone else who's struggling with something or in distress. And by doing that good deed for someone else, then it's expected that that person would go ahead and do that deed for someone else, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's no price on these good deeds. There's no expected reciprocity. What it is Jupiter spreading goodwill throughout the world. And that is Jupiter's job in astrology, to spread goodwill. Jupiter is known as a benefic. There are two benefics in astrology. Venus is one, and Jupiter is the other one. And benefics are said to bring good things. Now, Venus does this in one-on-one relationships because she's named after the Roman goddess of love and beauty. And Jupiter does this more in the context of a community or a group, or really a city-state. And the reason I say this is because Jupiter, the Roman god Jupiter, is actually named after Zeus, who is his Greek counterpart, Zeus, who is his original. And Zeus was the patron god of the polis, the city-state in ancient Greece. It was his job to govern, and govern wisely, and govern well over the city-state, but it was also his job to protect the city-state, to protect the people who lived under his aegis, the people who lived under his guardianship. And Jupiter has a similar function in astrology. When it's traveling through your own zodiac sign, or a sign that happens to trine or sextile yours, not only does it bring good fortune, but it also brings protection and sponsorship. So we have these different ideas of good fortune, of paying good fortune forward through good acts. And we also have this idea of sponsorship and protection. All of these things are connected to the astrological Jupiter. So when Jupiter enters a zodiac sign, it will enter that sign for 1 year. Okay, so everyone born under Leo or who has Leo rising is going to be all kinds of excited about Jupiter entering their zodiac sign on June 30th, because it means that, well, if you ever saw The Music Man, the Wells Fargo wagon is coming down the street and delivering all sorts of wonderful messages and gifts and packages and things that you've been expecting. And this is what Jupiter will do. But there's kind of a condition on this. As I said, it's not just winning the cosmic lottery. The point is that if good is done for you, you do good for other people. And Jupiter rewards that by bringing you more good fortune. In other words, the more good that you do for others, the more good fortune you are likely going to reap during this period of time that Jupiter is traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo. So, what is Leo like? Well, we're all pretty familiar with the zodiac sign of Leo. It's represented by the lion. It's a zodiac sign that occupies that part of the season of summer. It's the heart of summer. And in the Northern Hemisphere, which is where astrology originates, and which is why the signs and their temperaments and their personality are described in these ways, Leo is hot, and it's warm-hearted, and it's courageous, and it is the zodiac sign of fathers or father figures, particularly the good father. Now, just because you're born under Leo or you have Leo rising, that doesn't mean that you automatically had a good father. In fact, you might have even had a dreadful father. But the archetypal energy of Leo is so strong, it's so powerful, that even if you had a dreadful father or an absent father or a ne'er-do-well dad, you would believe in the power and the inspiration and influence of a father. So even if you didn't have that growing up in your own household, you would take it upon yourself to be the good father in your own life. And this applies to men as much as it does to women. There's a paternal quality to Leo. There's that sense of protection, there's that sense of caring, and there's that sense of providing. But what Leo also brings is this paternal side of teaching you what it's like to live in the world outside the home, okay? And being able to take care of yourself out there in the world and to help you be the best that you can possibly be. And let's say you fall down, let's say you stumble, let's say things don't work out for you, that Leo energy will come into your life and help you to get back up on your feet again and to try again with encouraging words, with warm support, with the promise that everything will work out in the end eventually. So Leo energy has a tendency to be very positive, it's very constructive, and it's going to accent the things that are going for you. It has a belief in you, and it wants you to be the best you that you could possibly be. So when you have Jupiter traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo, Jupiter, as I said, is the planet of good fortune and higher purpose. But more importantly, perhaps, Jupiter is the planet of belief. The way that you believe and what you believe in and what you believe the universe to be is very much colored by the zodiac sign that Jupiter is in. One could almost say it's the way that you would look at God or good fortune is going to be colored by the zodiac sign that Jupiter was in. For instance, if Jupiter is in a more Saturnine type of sign, it's going to be a belief in good fortune, that good fortune isn't just given to you, that you have to work hard for good fortune, that you may struggle and you may have to go through challenges, that good fortune itself may even be scarce. And so it's up to you to make your own fortune. That might be the sort of idea that we would encounter with, for instance, a Jupiter in Capricorn. If you have Jupiter in a zodiac sign like Cancer, for instance, there may be a belief in a deity or a providence that's deeply caring, that's deeply nourishing, that takes care of your wounds and your hurts and your pains and wants to be there to provide for you, to shelter you, and to nurture you. So there may be that idea. But then let's say you had, I don't know, Jupiter in an air sign, like maybe Gemini or even Aquarius. There might be this belief that God is math and that the universe is ruled by reason. And that if you can figure out the systems or the way that the universe works, this is your way of experiencing providence or good things happening to you. So Jupiter is going to change its guise, not its character, but its guise according to the zodiac sign it's in. Maybe you're familiar with The Masks of God, which was written by Joseph Campbell, and it was the idea of all these different mythologies. Well, Jupiter traveling through a zodiac sign is kind of like the mask of God, that it will deify the zodiac sign that it's moving through the properties that you experience it. And that will then go on to inspire, to fortify, and to bolster you. So with Jupiter in the zodiac sign of Leo, it's basically this idea of, I've got to be me, okay? That there is this faith that you have in yourself, that you've got to be me, and you've got to be the best me that you could possibly be. Sometimes this is misinterpreted as being egotistical or narcissistic or someone who's full of themselves. And certainly Jupiter has a tendency to inflate when it's going through a zodiac sign. And we'll get into that as we get into the forecasts for each one of the individual signs. But that's not all of Jupiter. When Jupiter is in a sign, it illuminates those characteristics of the sign, and it illuminates what's best about the sign. Okay, so if Leo is a lion and rules the heart, Jupiter illuminates the heart. It gives high value to the things that you feel, gives high value to your courage, to your valor, and it gives high value to you caring for people and being heroic. Okay, those are the things, those are the virtues that Jupiter in Leo is going to extol. Jupiter in Leo is going to give you a paternal quality of you wanting to protect the people that you care about and provide for them. But Jupiter in Leo, what it's really going to bring about is being the best me, basically being the best person that you can be, being the most noble, being the most generous, and being the most virtuous and inspirational. So Jupiter is going to extol and celebrate those qualities. And what you're going to naturally want to do is look to yourself. Okay, so you're going to be the father figure in your own life. You may even be the father figure in other people's lives. People may see you as a role model, someone that they hold up and that they are inspired by and that they want to be like. So the more generosity of spirit that you show, the more that Jupiter will appear in your life. But again, Jupiter is also celebrating and encouraging you to be you. Now, there are some zodiac signs that are very comfortable with that. Like, for instance, Leo. Okay. We often talk these days about an authentic self. Okay. Well, fire signs don't worry too much about an authentic self because fire is the element of the individual. It's the element of the self. And so fire signs are just naturally who they are. And those fire signs, of course, are going to be Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. But there may be other zodiac signs that struggle with that idea of an authentic self. They might regard it as being too selfish or too narcissistic, or they may regard it as possessing a sort of valor or courage that they can't imagine having. Or maybe Jupiter and Leo may possess a sort of faith or an optimism that some of the zodiac signs might regard as being naive or childish or asking for it if they were to embrace those qualities. So the way that Jupiter and Leo sits with each one of the zodiac signs is going to be very different, and it's going to be very telling. For some signs, it will be very accessible, and for other signs, it may be a little bit more of a struggle. Now, before I get into the forecast of Jupiter in Leo, and remember, Jupiter in Leo will be there for a year. It will enter the zodiac sign of Leo on June 30th, and it will depart Leo on July 27th of 2027. Before I get into that, I also want to make a quick comment about the Jupiter-Pluto opposition. In other words, no sooner does Jupiter enter the zodiac sign of Leo than it's going to form an opposition to Pluto. And that might make some of you go, uh-oh, like, oh no, is it not going to be as Santa Clausy as they thought he was going to be before? Opposite Pluto. What's the catch? What's the condition? Where is the rug going to be pulled out from under me? What's fascinating, though, about this opposition are the planets that are in opposition to one another. Jupiter is named after Zeus, the Greek god of the polis, the city-state. Zeus was a sky god. He ruled over Mount Olympus, which is where he hung out with the other gods and goddesses. That was their pantheon. That was their governorship. That was where they resided. All right. And so he's a sky god, And Jupiter was very much about judgment. And the judgment that he executed was the judgment of morality. Actually, to be more specific, Jupiter was the patron god that protected pledges and oaths that you swore. We still to this day swear on the Bible to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help us God. But that oath of telling the truth actually comes from Jupiter. It actually comes from Zeus, because Zeus was the god of oaths. That if you swore to God that you would do such a thing, or that you were telling the truth, then you were invoking the spirit of Zeus. What would happen if you didn't tell the truth, or if you didn't keep your pledge or promise? You were punished by Zeus. Okay, so Jupiter carries that promise and the enforcement of a promise if a promise is made. Moreover, and it's very important, is that Jupiter is a planet of morals. Okay, it believes in good and bad, and it believes in good action, in doing, as I said before, good deeds. Now, it's forming an opposition right when it enters Leo to Pluto in the zodiac sign of Aquarius. So you want to sort of think of Jupiter as being moral, good deeds that you practice in your life, and Pluto's a little different. Like Jupiter, Pluto is a judge, okay? Jupiter judged over the good and bad acts of people in the world and the way that they were living, and if they didn't keep their oaths, if they didn't keep their promises, if they did bad things to other people, they were punished. Okay, so Jupiter was associated to law and order, right? Pluto, like Jupiter, who is his brother, Jupiter and Pluto are brothers, all right? Pluto was the judge of the underworld. So Pluto judged over those souls that descended down into the underworld, and he judged whether these souls were virtuous or not. Did you basically live a good life on the whole, or were you a dreadful, nasty person? Okay, so one of these ideas that we can have when we think of Pluto judging the souls is the Egyptian god Anubis, who would weigh the heart of the deceased, which was the soul of the deceased, in one dish of the scale of the balance, and then he would put Mot, the feather of truth, in the other dish of the balance, and he would weigh them to see how they worked. If Mot, the feather, balanced with the soul, then that was deemed to be a good soul. And so it was sent to heaven or whatever, passed for heaven in the idea of Egypt. And if the soul sank, and Mot, the dish of Mot went up, then that was deemed to be an evil soul or a corrupt soul. And it was thrown by Anubis into the gaping jaws of the hippopotamus god, the god of death that devoured all the souls that were found wanting. Well, in Greece, there wasn't really a hippopotamus god that was hanging out to devour all the souls. But in Greece, Pluto, or Hades, which was his Greek name, would either assign a soul to the Elysian fields, which was basically the forerunner of heaven, or if the souls were bad, they were thrown into the belching pits of Tartarus to be condemned forever. Pluto's judgment is not really the same as Jupiter's. Jupiter is judging you through your good acts, through your morality. Okay. Pluto is looking at the sum of your life. All right. Has your life been a good act? Or has your life been one where you have caused dreadful things to happen to other people? A good word to keep in mind with Pluto, because of his association with the afterlife, is karma. Okay, and karma is this idea that the sum total of your life, the sum total of the acts in your life are weighed in the balance, and that's going to affect your future lives that you will be incarnated into. That's one way of looking at Pluto. Another way of looking at Pluto with karma is that if you do good, then good comes back to you. But if you do bad, and this is the Pluto point, okay, if you do bad, then bad things come back to you. So here we have this kind of opposition between morality and karma. And this is something that I want to investigate a little bit more deeply as we get into each one of the forecasts for the 12 zodiac signs. So Without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about what it will be like for Jupiter to be in the zodiac sign of Leo for each and every one of the 12 zodiac signs. If you're born under Aries or you have Aries rising, Jupiter traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo is going to be wonderful for you. Now, the reason why Jupiter in the zodiac sign of Leo is going to be so good for you is because Leo is a fire sign, just like Aries is a fire sign. And so that creates what we call a trine in astrology. Jupiter will not only be trining your own zodiac sign, but it will be trining certain planets in your zodiac sign right now. And those planets are Neptune and Saturn. What's good about this is that Jupiter in Leo is going to embolden that feeling of being Aries or Aries rising. Right now, as I referred to just a couple of minutes ago, Neptune is in the zodiac sign of Aries. So right now, you may be feeling lost at sea. You may be feeling a bit clueless in your life, like you don't really know where your life is going. You know that you're supposed to be going somewhere, but you may not have the most solid idea of what that is. In addition to Neptune being in your own zodiac sign, which has a tendency to cloud and confuse, it is, after all, the planet of illusion and disillusionment in astrology. You also have Saturn in your own zodiac sign. And Saturn in your own sign is going to make you feel burdened, perhaps with heavy responsibilities, tasks, or duties. Or Saturn in your own sign might make you feel like if you're up against a steep challenge, you don't know if you've got the wherewithal to meet it. You don't know if you have the courage. So you certainly feel the doubt. You certainly feel the anxiety. Things never come as easily as they used to come when you have Saturn traveling through your own zodiac sign. And you may feel at a bit of a loss. You might even be avoiding certain challenges or certain tests to your valor and your strength and your dedication. Things that people born under Aries and Aries rising naturally take on. But during this period of time with Saturn in your own sign, you may be doubting your capabilities. You may be doubting your abilities. You may be wondering how to get out of these tests, trials, and tribulations that you face, that you just don't have the verve and the gumption that you used to have. So, as you can imagine, thank heavens that Jupiter is entering the zodiac sign of Leo on June 30th. Because here you will have this burst of fire again. That faith in yourself will be rekindled. You will feel that valor and that courage. Remember that Leos are lion-hearted, meaning courageous, and that is something that might have been missing for a little while. And that is something that may be coming roaring to life now that Jupiter is in the zodiac sign of Leo. So this is going to be a good thing, especially since Jupiter is traveling through that part of your solar chart that pertains to love, pleasures, and children. Okay, so this is meant to accent the things that give you pleasure and joy in life. Now, most signs would be like, oh, wonderful, pleasure and joy in my life. That's such a great thing. But being born under Aries or Aries rising, too much pleasure and too much joy makes you feel a little uncomfortable. Okay, now what does Aries have against pleasure and joy? Well, what Aries has against pleasure and joy, or more likely why it can feel cautious around it, is because Aries is ruled by the planet Mars, named after the Roman god of war. So what Aries expects is for everything to be a challenge. It expects everything to be a test. And if you get too much pleasure or too much joy in your life, then you become complacent. You become believing, you lower your guard, and then you set yourself up for some sort of betrayal or treachery or something along those lines. You may not actually sleep with sword and shield under your bed, but metaphorically speaking, if you're born under Aries or you have Aries rising, you pretty much do. So what Jupiter's here to show you is that you can enjoy pleasure and joy in your life, and it doesn't have to make you soft. And it's not setting you up to be taken by brigands on the road or something along those lines. That with pleasure and joy comes confidence. If you have too much Saturn in your life, for instance, then there's too much test. There's too much trial. There's too much tribulation. And oftentimes people who have strong Saturn in their lives can feel maybe even overwhelmed by the burdens they carry, or overwhelmed by depression or melancholy. Or maybe if you're born under a Mars-ruled sign, the relationship to Saturn can be along the lines of, well, what's a new thing that I can do without? What's something else that I can sacrifice? What's something else that is some sort of luxury or some sort of indulgence that I can do without, that I can strip away, that I can get rid of in my life because it's making me complacent and it's lowering my guard and it's turning me into a fat cat. And I'm Mars and I need to be a lean, mean fighting machine sort of thing. So what happens here is that Jupiter brings the assurance, okay, that your life isn't going to go to hell if you're enjoying parts of it, but with that assurance also comes the understanding that maybe you want to start seeing your life more in terms of plenty rather than rigor. Okay, when you're born under Mars or you have Mars strong, everything is a fight or a challenge or not really to be trusted. Okay, so when Jupiter comes on in here, Jupiter is a planet that's very much associated to plenty. And sometimes if we're too hard on ourselves, if we're too severe in the way that we see the world, where we keep ourselves always at the ready, we keep ourselves always in a sort of military standing, and we don't really enjoy the plenty of life. And so our confidence and our belief in ourselves is defined more by challenge, by test, trial, and tribulation than it is defined by a confidence that we have in ourselves, a faith that we have in ourselves. And that is something that Jupiter in Leo is going to be sparking in you. Jupiter in Leo is also going to be showing you it's not a crime to fall in love. It's not a crime to be vulnerable around someone else. And so you may also be experiencing during this period of time that Jupiter is in Leo, June 30th to July 27th, 2027, is a loved one helping you. Remember how I said earlier that Jupiter is about goodwill. It's being there on hand if you need help with something. Maybe you're struggling with something, a heavy burden or an obligation or loss of faith in your own self, as a result of Saturn or even Neptune in the zodiac sign of Aries. Jupiter may show up as a loved one. Maybe it's your spouse or a friend or a close companion, or it's a child, maybe even a member of your family, someone helping you with an inner struggle that you're having. Aries have a hard time saying that they need help with the struggle, because if you're born under Aries or you have Aries rising, you're rather resolute about going through this struggle by yourself, and that to show any need, any vulnerability to ask for help is to really set you up for weakness and for people to prey upon your weakness. Aries, any Mars-ruled sign, this includes Scorpio, are very sensitive about showing any kind of weakness or vulnerability, because like the animal kingdom, it moves you from the predator column into the prey column. And so Mars, very strong Mars in a chart, will be very resistant to that. But what can be nice about the Neptune trining the Jupiter is that it can soften. It can soften the edges in your own Ariesness. I don't know if that's a word or not. And it can make you more open. It can make you more open to the love and the support of other people. So instead of pursuing passionately the things that you want, you can pursue passionately the things that you want, but you don't have to be so single-minded. And it can be done with, I don't know, perhaps more humor, more joy, and more importantly than even all of that is more of a sense of plenty and plenitude. If you're born under Taurus or you have Taurus rising, this period of time that Jupiter is traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo is going to be a bit of a challenge for you. Now, the challenges that Leo and Taurus experience when they're working with one another are really quite subtle. And they're subtle because there's so much that Leo and Taurus really have in common. These are two zodiac signs that are fixed. Any fixed sign is no before yes. Can be very stubborn, very tenacious, very fixed on their course or the course of action that they're going to take. But these zodiac signs in the ancient world very much represented power. Okay. There was the power of the bull. Okay. Bulls were very much to be feared, and they could charge at you, and they were seen as virility and strength. Indeed, in ancient Rome, they were sacrificed, and their blood was used to give virility and strength to people. So the bull has always been associated to strength and to power. And the lion, on the other hand, was also associated to strength and power. But there was also a kind of majesty to the lion, and there was even a kind of wildness to the lion. Indeed, one of the things that form a square or talk about the difference between Taurus and Leo is that Taurus ultimately became a domesticated animal, and Leo, the lion, did not. So Leo, the lion, represented the wilderness. It represented things outside society and civilization, whereas bulls, being represented by Taurus, were in pastures. They were gathered together in herds. They pulled plows and things like this. So they were domesticated, whereas the lion wasn't domesticated. And of course, another difference between the bull and the lion is that lions fed on bulls. We see them when they're going after wildebeests or water buffaloes. I mean, lions or a pack of lions can jump on a bull and take it down and kill it and eat it. So there's that kind of difference or that kind of square between the two. Now, how do we interpret this into our day-to-day lives? Because obviously the square isn't going to introduce lions into your life that are trying to take you down or anything along those lines. But what happens here is that there is a struggle between the things that you are supposed to be doing. Okay, Taurus is an earth sign, so it's going to very much identify with obligations and responsibilities. People born under Taurus or who have Taurus rising are natural providers. They're natural growers. They're associated to the earth, whether the earth is being tilled or whether the earth is being gardened, and whether those gardens are for vegetables and fruit or those gardens are for pastures. Taurus rules over the heart of spring, when things are growing, they're blooming, they're leafing, they're actually past the first part of spring. They're going into full bloom during the period of time of Taurus. So there's very much a sense of domesticity, of carrying burdens and obligations, and of producing something that is good for civilization. It's good for society. That could be producing food, that could be producing money, livestock. It's the idea of production that creates wealth in society. These are notions and ideas that are connected to Taurus or people with Taurus rising. The idea of wealth building, or garden building. Health and wealth are basically ruled by the element of earth. Now, the lion, on the other hand, is not going to have this same relationship to obligations and responsibilities that someone born under the bull is going to have. Remember that Leo is about being true to who you are. No zodiac sign stands up for individuality and making a difference like someone born under Leo or who has Leo rising. They are literally the star of the zodiac because Leo is ruled by the sun, and the sun is the only ruling planet that's actually a star and not a planet. So that individuality, that standing up for self, that showing other people the value of your own individuality, the value of your own self, putting a high price on that, a high value is probably a better word to use on that, is something that Leos bring to everyone. They touch people's lives and they make people feel special. Okay, Leos or people with Leo rising don't go parading through their life, extending their hand and saying, "Kiss my ring." Okay, people with Leo or Leo rising have that sort of star power, which is that they can come in through a group of people and everyone gets excited and they feel warmed and inspired, and this is someone special. And they give that sense of specialness to other people. If you're born under Leo or Leo rising, it's not really about being adored. If you're born under Leo or Leo rising, it's really about generating that solar power that is associated to the sun, which is your ruling planet. The sun brings vitality and life, and people born under Leo and Leo rising bring that vitality and life. So what you can have here with the square might be a difference, because remember that squares talk about differences or even combativeness. Really, the square is more kind of like a one-upmanship between the two zodiac signs. Okay, you're going to be dealing with Taurus, which wants to create beauty and worth in its life. It is Venus ruled, but Taurus is about fulfilling responsibilities and obligations and shoring up things, working hard and producing something, and then the Leo is more about the self. Now we might say, oh, is it the self, is it as in selfish, or noblesse oblige? It's like, why should I do that? I'm a Leo. I'm too special to get my hands dirty with something like that. That's not really what it is. What it is that Leos stand for the individuality. And so if you don't like the work that you're doing, or if you don't feel like it's the true expression of who you are, then you're going to have a problem. All right. Taurus sees itself as working and fulfilling obligations. That Taurians or Taurus rising can see themselves as beasts of burden. That doesn't mean that they just burden themselves, that they take work seriously. Finding their life work is really important. Okay. For a Leo, finding the life path or the heart of your life, or who you are, and expressing who you are and living in accordance to that is more important than the work. That's probably the best way to clarify the square. Now, what Jupiter in Leo is going to be doing is a couple of different things over the coming year. First of all, Jupiter in Leo will be traveling through that part of your solar chart that deals with hearth, home, and family and roots. And oftentimes, when we have Jupiter by transit going through this part of our chart, which is basically the nadir of the chart, or it's also called IC. IC, by the way, are the abbreviated Latin words imum coeli, which means bottom of the sky. There's the midheaven, which is the top of the sky. And then there's imum coeli, which is the bottom of the sky. Okay, when you have Jupiter traveling through here, that can mean a move or a relocation. Oftentimes it can be associated to something along those lines. When you also have Jupiter traveling through this part of your solar chart, it can also bring endings with it. Something coming to a conclusion, a chapter coming to a close, endings. And with an ending comes a new beginning. Now, that's not just sort of like with an ending comes a new beginning. It's not like a little poetical phrase. It's literally true. The fourth house is the part of the solar chart that pertains to midnight. And we know that at midnight, one day ends. Okay. 11:59 at night is one day ending. And it goes from 11:59 p.m. to 12 and then 12:01 a.m. So you have the beginning of a new day, not with the rising of the sun, but in the midnight position. The moment or two after midnight marks the start of a new day. So Jupiter going through this part of your solar chart may be indicating that something is coming to a close, something is coming to an end. That may bring an end to a business venture or a chapter of your life, or signing off on the purchase of a home, maybe, because the fourth house is also associated to property, hearth, home, and family. But what this is also going to talk about with Jupiter and Leo down here at the bottom of your chart is the buried faith that you have in yourself. Okay. And what that might mean, because the Leo is at the base of the chart and Jupiter is here, you may not have a faith in yourself that you feel like you exercise or is recognized, or even like it's something that you talk about. You may have a faith in yourself or a quiet faith in the universe that you keep to yourself. Maybe it's very reverential, or maybe it's very sacred to you. But what it could also talk about is a faith in yourself that may be buried. And that's the thing that I want to address, if that's indeed making any sort of sense or has any relevance to you. Perhaps you're familiar with that phrase. I think it's from the Bible, which is the light of the world being kept under a bushel, or keeping your inner light under a bushel. And this is something that can happen with people who are born under Taurus or Taurus rising. The work comes first. The industry is something that you commit yourself to. Producing results is something that's very important. But that thing that makes you special, that faith that you have in yourself, may be something that's in the back corner of your closet somewhere. And so with Jupiter in Leo coming through this part of your solar chart, it may be asking you to rekindle that faith that you have in yourself. Maybe things are coming to an end and you're seeing this as something that's threatening or bad. Then the Jupiter in Leo is saying, have faith in yourself. Not only will you get through this, but you will arrive on the other side in a different place in your life. Now, does that mean like get over any sort of sadness that you have with a loss or a separation or the simple conclusion of something? No. What it gets you to keep in mind is that ending and beginning are things that naturally happen, like the cycle of life or the circle of life, if you've watched The Lion King or something along those lines. Again, it can sound a little bit cliched, but it's as real as the end of a day and the beginning of a new one. So with Jupiter here in Leo going through this part of your chart, it may be a resurrected faith in your hearth, in your home, in your family. It may be an old family issue that is coming forward and needs to be honored in some way, a faith in family, a trust, a belief, or it may simply just be a trust and a faith and a belief in yourself. You may, during this period of time of a square, be calling upon a faith in yourself that you haven't called upon in a very, very long time. You might have gone through a period of time where you said things were okay, and maybe for a long period of time, they weren't okay. Or maybe you're going through a period of time where you're trying to go back to an old role that you used to perform, and it's not sitting with you comfortably. Now part of you may still have PTSD about Uranus going through your sign, which is like, oh no, is this triggering my world going upside down? No, it's not that at all. What's going on here is that Jupiter in Leo will always stand for belief in yourself, in the idea of I've got to be me. And before, where you might have shied away or begged off or maybe postponed it, Jupiter in Leo is going to say to you, you can't postpone this anymore. Not because of any sort of burning urgency. It's just going to make you feel like you can't go back to those things that you thought you could just go back to. And that it's about looking at tomorrow as a new day, which is so connected to the sun and so connected to Leo. So finding or reconnecting to this faith in yourself and making it a priority in your life as you're going through these changes that Jupiter in Leo may be introducing. This is something that's not only going to give you great strength, but it's also going to give you a vision for your own individual future. If you're born under Gemini or you have Gemini rising, this period of time that Jupiter is moving through Leo is going to be wonderful for you. What Jupiter in Leo is going to do from June 30th of 2026 until July 27th of 2027 is that it's going to be encouraging all of those things about you that make you wonderful. It's going to be encouraging all those things about you that make you brilliant. It's going to be encouraging all those things about you that make you special and unique, that advocate your talents, that advocate your abilities, and that advocate your insight. And Jupiter in Leo will be encouraging all of those things about you that love to have fun and a good time. So this period of time when Jupiter is in Leo is going to be a potentially joyous period of time for you. It's going to certainly be a very playful one. And it's going to be something in which you are really relishing who you are. And you're going to be relishing the value of people in your life, your friendships, and your acquaintances. It's kind of like, I don't know, waking up on a day and leaving your home and going and saying hi to all the neighbors and going and shopping and everyone recognizing you and asking you things and you responding in kind. And I don't know, did you ever see Beauty and the Beast? It's the beginning of Beauty and the Beast. I think it's the opening number where Belle is just sort of walking through the village and everyone's like, hi, Belle. And they're greeting her and she's like, greeting them back. This is really what Jupiter and Leo is going to be like. Everyone's going to be so delighted, so happy to see you. And they're going to want to wish you the best day that you could possibly have. And you're going to do the same. So it's really going to be a joy in your neighborhood, in your surroundings, and the people that you know, and this feeling that they want the best for you. And of course, you want the best for them. So this is really a terrific time that Jupiter in Leo brings, it ushers into your life. It's a friendliness, it's a loveliness, it's a wonderful sense of fun. Okay, so this is great. This is wonderful. And if you're born under Gemini or Gemini rising, at about this point of my description, you're like, and where's the catch? It's like, okay, it's great that I'm Belle at the beginning of Beauty and the Beast and things like that. I'm saying hi to everyone, and that's great. But where's the catch here, Christopher? Okay. Well, the fact of the matter is there is no catch. When you've got Jupiter in the zodiac sign of Leo, which is forming a sextile to your own sign, which is Gemini. Leo is a fire sign, just like Gemini is an air sign, and the two understand one another and get along with one another famously. They're both regarded as being yang energy, or what can also be called as masculine energy in an astrological chart. So there's a sense of camaraderie, there's a sense of empowerment, there's a sense of illumination and a lifting of spirits. These things are very real. These things are very strong. So why would there be a sort of like insinuated note of caution? Well, it has to do with this sextile that Jupiter is also forming to the zodiac sign of Gemini. Basically, what you have here is that the people in your life are supporting you in what you do. They're encouraging you in what you do, and they really want the best for you. They want you to excel. They want you to be the best that you could be. But this is something that sort of begs the question of, who are you hanging out with? Okay, because Jupiter is traveling through that part of your solar chart that deals with your peers, with your neighborhood, with the people that you see every day. Gemini is a zodiac sign that's very much associated to friendships and acquaintances. I mean, nobody can make a friend faster than someone born under Gemini or a Gemini rising. You're really easy to talk to, and you're a natural icebreaker. You can get the conversation going in a room full of strangers. Everyone might begin sort of uptight and eyeing each other suspiciously, but all we need is a Gemini or Gemini rising to enter the room and share a few fun facts and a sort of secret glances and making someone laugh. And the ice is broken. You know, people are talking with one another. This is what Geminis and Gemini risings do. But because of the nature of Mercury and because of the nature of the mutability of your zodiac sign, you can also be very much affected and inspired by the people you're hanging out with. All right. It's interesting because Geminis do have a critical ability. You know, they'll ask questions and they'll poke at things and find faults with just to sort of see what's wrong with something. Remember, Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, and the Latin root of Mercury is merc, where we get merchandise and merchant and mercantile. So there's always something about the Gemini that's shaking the box to make sure that the product they're buying is good. Okay, so Geminis have that kind of a critical ability. They shake the box, they poke around, they kick the tires. They want to make sure that what they're purchasing is good and not a lemon, something that was given to them and it used to be off the back of someone's truck. All right, so that's where the critical ability of Gemini comes in. But Mercury, because it's a ruler of a mutable sign, has a tendency to go along with the people that you're hanging out with. Okay, now, if you're hanging out with a group of people, that wants the best for you and they espouse these wonderful values. And remember, Jupiter is about values. It's about your moral values. Okay, then this is good. But if you're hanging around a group of people, who are shoplifting or taking things off the back of a truck or, trying to get away with things or are, talking about how you have to outmaneuver someone or get the better part of a deal. Maybe they're emphasizing more of the competitive streak with Gemini or more of the prankster side to Gemini. And there's nothing wrong with a prank if it's done in good fun, then that could start to show up in your behavior. It's kind of like, I don't know, having been an A+ student and then you fall in with a group of friends and now you're C- or something like that. So, you always want to be very careful of who you're socializing with. Perhaps it's more like you want to be careful of how you're responding to the people that you're socializing with when you have Jupiter and Leo in this particular place. Because the more that things become easy or accessible, that can bring about its own version of a misfortune. Misfortune isn't the exclusive realm of the malefics, okay, which is Mars and Saturn. Mars can be the misfortune of combat and fight and strife, and Saturn can be the misfortune of things not working out, or depression or melancholy, or having worked really hard and all you got was this one little thing as a result. We're kind of familiar with how the malefics can bring misfortune, but the benefics can bring misfortune too. And one of the things that's associated with Jupiter is too much of a good thing. Okay, so in other words, Jupiter, because it brings good things, can have a tendency towards excess, and it will have a tendency towards excess through the positive aspects that it makes. Okay, it may begin to inflate. It may begin to exaggerate. If you got away with something, you might try getting away with it again, type of thing. And Jupiter encourages that, particularly through a sextile. Now, I'm not saying I'm not being the buzzkill for you here. I'm not saying don't let that love of excess run away with you, Gemini or Gemini rising. I'm likening it more to the element of fire and the way that fire behaves. There's a difference, for instance, between a campfire, okay, or a fire in an oven, or a campfire. Let's stay with campfire. And a campfire is tended. It's you watch a campfire. You take care of a campfire. You don't just let it burn on its own. And if if it's time to go to bed or something along those lines, you throw earth on the campfire and you extinguish it. So there's a difference between a contained fire, like a campfire, for instance, and a raging wildfire, okay, which has sparked and climbed up the trees and is now raging over the countryside and destroying all of this property. When you combine wind and fire like this, it can create that kind of wildfire effect in your life. I'm not saying you have to watch out for wildfires. I'm using this allegorically, but it can start to create this feeling of, let's say you're hanging around with people who may not have the best idea for you, or may not be good people for you to hang around. This is going to become more so. This can take on more of a wildfire burning in your life. You can come to believe that certain things should be yours, that certain things belong to you. You can begin to have an inflated sense of the people around you, and you might even begin to have an inflated sense of yourself, or maybe even this idea of being above the law in some way. And this is what brings in the Pluto opposition. The Jupiter in Leo is bringing good things, and it's sextiling the Gemini, and things are good in the moment. And morality isn't always strictly good or bad. Morality can also become a way of justifying a position or justifying your actions. And so you want to keep in mind this Pluto opposition. Are your actions having good? Are your actions producing good in the world? Or are they producing good effects that better you, but maybe to the detriment of someone else? This is always going to be the big question of the Leo Aquarius oppositions that are taking place. So what I'm saying is keep that in mind. As good things happen in life, this is a wonderful thing, but there can be certain times where the good things that happen to you begin to spoil you, or begin to make you feel like you're an exception to a rule, or maybe gets you to judge people in a more condescending sort of way. I'm not saying that this is exclusive to your sign. It's not, but it can be a side effect of good fortune, which is something that you always want to keep in check with conscience. Are the actions I'm doing bringing good to other people's lives as well as myself? And Gemini is an air sign. The good that you experience is based on the good that you do for others. It's relational. It's the way you deal with other people. Are these actions bringing good, or are these actions, making me look at people differently? Maybe not as peers, maybe even below me in some way, or maybe I'm now going to get back at people who've done a bad turn towards me. Those sorts of things. Those are the sorts of things that you always want to keep in mind when you have good fortune happening to you in your own life. And if you keep this in mind, not only will you get to experience the good and the joy of seeing your goodwill expand like a widening ripple through all of your life, but you'll also be able to enjoy the companionship and the company of people who truly do bring out the best in you and whom you bring out the best in return. If you're born under Cancer or you have Cancer rising, this period of time that Jupiter is traveling through Leo is going to be wonderful for you. The wonderful thing about being born under Cancer is that really you get the benefits of Jupiter passing through not only your own sign, but Leo as well. In fact, the luminaries often benefit from a planet that's traveling through both their signs. Let's take Saturn, for instance. Saturn rules over two zodiac signs that are right next to one another. Saturn rules over Capricorn and it rules over Aquarius. It is the traditional ruler of these two zodiac signs. In fact, this is the only instance in astrology where we have two signs next to one another that are ruled by the same planet, which is Saturn. So basically, Saturn's passage through Capricorn has an extended passage when it goes through Aquarius, because they're both Saturn ruled. The same sort of holds true with Cancer and Leo. Cancer and Leo aren't ruled by the same planet per se, like Aquarius and Capricorn are ruled by Saturn, but they're ruled by the luminaries, and the luminaries very much represent night and day. They're flip sides of the same coin. So basically, when you have Jupiter going through Cancer, as a Cancer, you get all the benefits of Jupiter going through your zodiac sign, but you also get the benefit of Jupiter going through Leo, because you being moon, you're naturally associated to the sun. The moon reflects the sun's light, just like people born under Leo or who had Leo rising might actually have experienced some of the benefits of Jupiter passing through Cancer. There is this connection between the moon and the sun that's integral. They're bonded to one another. And so in some ways, I've seen that same thing that happens, that whatever good happens to Cancer will happen to Leo. In the case of Jupiter being good, it goes through Cancer for a year. You get the additional year of Jupiter going through Leo. Hopefully that made some kind of sense to you. But the only thing that you have to take away from it is you get 2 years of Jupiter bringing benefits and good things to your zodiac sign or to your corner of the horoscope. So this is a wonderful thing. With Jupiter leaving Cancer, it's not just going to leave, it's going to continue its benevolence as it passes through the zodiac sign of Leo. And this is a good thing. So this idea of fulfillment, this idea of good things happening to you, this is wonderful, and this will continue. But what's also interesting that's going on is that things that might have been under the surface and not seen when Jupiter was going through Cancer will come out in the light when it's going through Leo. Okay, so maybe your experience of Jupiter in Cancer was more internal or more private. Okay, when it moves into Leo on June 30th, and it's there until July 27th of next year, 2027, you're going to have more of a sense that what was private to you now is public and seen. All right, so it's going from Cancer moon or lunar energy, dark night, to solar energy, which is light and seen. Probably the best analogy or example that I could give to illustrate that idea is that you plant a seed and the seed germinates in the earth and then it begins to sprout and flower. Well, that period of time of the seed germinating in the earth may have been the Jupiter going through your sign, And now that it's gone into Leo, you're going to see the fruits of your labors. You're going to see it sprout. You're going to see it grow, and you're going to see it bloom. And of course, because Jupiter is a planet of morality and goodwill and doing good to other people, basically it just, well, it's kind of like as old as Christmas. Okay. If you've been nice, that's wonderful. You'll see wonderful, nice things happen. And if you've been not so nice, you might be experiencing coal in your stocking during this period of time. And that doesn't mean that you just are collecting coals for the next year. Jupiter is very much about reform, even repentance. And so Jupiter stay in Leo if you don't like what has been wrought or brought about by your actions of Jupiter going through your own zodiac sign. You have an opportunity to turn that around. You have an opportunity to learn from maybe the things that were missteps or didn't turn out right, and you can make them good. Again, as long as you use Jupiter, the planet of goodwill, as your North Star, as your guiding light. The big thing that's going to be taking place here is Jupiter passing through that part of your solar chart that has to do with finances. And this should be a good time for you. The reason it should be a good time for you is because Jupiter is in Leo, which is a fire sign, and you currently in your solar horoscope have Neptune and Saturn together in the 10th house in Aries, which is a fire sign. Okay, so you may see that through your hard effort, through you facing tests, trials, and tribulations, maybe even going through the gauntlet, that Jupiter is bringing that support, that faith that you have in yourself. Perhaps a simpler way of putting it is that you may see your hard work pay off during this period of time that Jupiter is traveling through Leo, which is June 30th until July 27th of 2027. Okay, so this is actually a good thing. One would say, oh, this is really, really wonderful. But the condition here is that even though you have a strong affinity to Leo, you're still not really the same sign. It's the sign that's next to you. And so what can happen here, whenever you have a planet that's forming a semi-sextile relationship to your own sign, that creates a blind spot in an astrological chart. It's something that you can feel is there, but because it's a blind spot, you don't necessarily see or recognize it. If you think of driving down the freeway, okay, there can be a car that you don't really see in the rearview mirror because it's in your blind spot. And that maybe you have to look around and take a look to make sure that, there isn't a car in your blind spot when you change lanes. Okay, so that's kind of analogous to how a blind spot can work in astrology. So again, Jupiter is the planet of plenty and good fortune and higher purpose. And you should certainly be expecting this in terms of your finances for the year. But we also have to keep in mind that Jupiter is opposite Pluto in Aquarius, which will be in your solar 8th house. And what that's going to be begging the question of is basically, has money made you a better person or maybe not such a better person? Money. Money, it's not the root of all evil. I mean, I want to begin with that idea. Money is not the root of all evil. It's blamed for that. It's demonized with that idea. But what can happen is that money can reflect what's going on inside of ourselves. This gets back to the notion that money is connected to the element of earth, which is health and wealth. And what can happen when you've got Jupiter in a second house position like you do, it can bring prosperity. And it's going to do exactly that. There's a lot for you to look forward to. But when it's opposite Pluto, the question can't help but be at what cost? Okay, that the prosperity comes into your life, but at what cost? And it's actually quite simple when you're dealing with a Pluto opposition. If Jupiter is the planet of goodwill and morality, then Pluto, as I was saying earlier, is the planet of karma, your good actions. Are you doing good actions to other people? Okay. Are you acting in good faith? Are you, sharing that prosperity? Is the tide, that's rolling in, lifting all boats? This is a generosity of spirit, which is really sacred to Jupiter traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo. And if you're acting in that good faith, and if you're acting in that sense of prosperity, even during the times when it's not so prosperous, Jupiter rewards goodwill with goodwill. The more that you pay it forward, the more goodwill that you exhibit to other people, the more goodwill you bring into the world, and the more goodwill is going to be exhibited to you. Not necessarily in a reciprocity, but it's because what's the phrase we use for it nowadays? It's because you put it out there. You put out this generosity, you put out this goodwill, and it's as simple as getting other people to smile back, or to look at you and say, thank you, or here's gratitude, or this is a wonderful thing, or you were there for me during a time when I was struggling. And so this is something that is going to be very special. And this is something that's going to be very important to Jupiter traveling through this part of your solar horoscope. Now, that sounds like, okay, almost like, I have to do a smile and the world will smile back. And it can be that to a degree, but Pluto is also moving through a part of your solar chart, which is a very delicate angle of your solar chart. It's moving through what we call the 8th house, which is the house of sex, death, and other people's money. I know it always sounds like a 1980s punk rock band, but what the 8th house really talks about is our brushes with mortality. Okay, that when we have a planet transiting through the 8th house, it doesn't mean like you're going to have a close call with death and you'll have a afterlife experience. It doesn't mean that at all. What it means is that you have a brush with mortality, and anything can trigger that brush with mortality. Of course, it could be someone who's facing something difficult in their life, health-wise or something like that. That can certainly be it in a very explicit way. But more often than not, with transits through the 8th house, like a Pluto, it can be this feeling of being beholden, that you're under someone else's thumb, or that something is being held over your head in some way. And so what Pluto can do in the 8th house is it can bring this fear of scarcity with money. The 2nd house and the 8th house are both money houses, and money has a lot to do with our feeling of mortality, even more than value. Okay, it's if we have enough money to feed ourselves and to take care of the people that we love and to make a beautiful home, we feel good in life. Okay, money has provided a roof over our head and a bed to call our own. But if money is threatened in that way, that we don't have that, that the roof over our head isn't that secure, that the bed we call our own isn't that secure, then that can bring out great anxiety and great worry and great fear. Now, sometimes when you have an opposition like these planets, it can come out like that. There can be a reduction in what you're making, or maybe a termination of your job or something, and you're facing that head on. And this can happen during that period of time. And we go to a place of panic or manning battle stations. But what Jupiter in Leo is here to remind you of is that you live in a world of plenty. Okay, you have value, talent, ability that can bring this sense of plenty into your life. And because Leo is connected to me, okay, and so it's a faith in myself. So it's not so much a faith in money or a faith in myself to make money, it's a faith in myself. And the faith and belief in myself generates life-giving properties that makes things grow and be. And so if you come out of that sense of plenty and you subscribe to that, then you will enjoy that in your own life. But if it goes or veers towards scarcity, which is holding back, or seeing money as being scarce and not around, and something that you have to really protect, then Jupiter will not be able to work its goodwill. Okay, Jupiter works its goodwill through good fortune. It works its goodwill through good acts. Even though those acts might seem silly or naive, that's the way that Jupiter makes the world a better place. So during this period of time, if you can embrace that sense of prosperity and plenty really coming from the heart rather than what the numbers add up to at the end of the day, then this is where you're going to see Jupiter really, really work for you. But if you give in to anxiety and fear, and it's okay if you give in to anxiety and fear for the day or that week or even a month or a year or whatever, but don't let it become a worldview. Don't let it become the thing that dictates your behavior, because if you do that, then you will choke off the energy that Jupiter has to give. Jupiter is all about faith and belief. And when Jupiter is in the zodiac sign of Leo, it's all about the sun rising on a new day. If you're born under Leo or you have Leo rising, Jupiter entering your own zodiac sign on June 30th is going to be a spectacular thing for you. This is the thing that you've waited 12 years for, okay? Jupiter has gone through all 12 zodiac signs and has returned to your own sign, and it's going to bring good things, hopefully. I'm not quite sure if it might have brought good things the last time it did its rounds. There was a lot of planetary aspects that were causing difficulty for Jupiter, so it might have been a little watered down in its effect 12 years ago. But this time, Jupiter is aided and abetted by the different planets in the sky, particularly the slower moving planets like the modern planets and Saturn. So what's going on here is that Jupiter is getting a lot of what we call chart support in the sky. It's getting a lot of support from the elements of fire and air, and this is a good thing. So Jupiter going through your own zodiac sign from June 30th of this year to July 27th of next year, Jupiter will be bringing good things, but Jupiter will also be bringing consciousness raising things. Remember that Jupiter is about providence as well as prosperity. And so with providence comes this idea of doing good in the world. Jupiter is a benefic. It brings good things, but it adds more good things to you if you show more goodwill or do good acts for other people. This is the idea of Jupiter. Jupiter is bringing the idea of God down to earth. In most mythologies, a god that takes over the pantheon sort of departs, after he's done creating or he's installed as a figure. He departs from the world. He doesn't have much to do with the world. He's prayed to in houses of worship, but he doesn't really show up, not like the way he did in previous scriptures or holy passages or things along those lines. The one exception to this pretty much is Jupiter or Zeus, which is his Greek name in Greek mythology. Zeus loved mankind, not right away. Actually, to begin with, Zeus's relationship to mankind was full of malice. He saw mankind as being natural slaves to him and regarded them with no value whatsoever after Prometheus produced mankind from the dust and from the earth. Zeus basically saw mankind as cattle, livestock, things to be used. But over a period of time, which is Zeus's life in the world and life in time, Zeus or Jupiter begins to value mankind, to see mankind as being something very special, and to regard and honor the life of mankind. Now, it's still a distant relationship. We can have a favorite pet, and we love our pet. Sometimes we love our pet more than we love the people in our lives, right? But that pet more often than not, doesn't live as long as we do, and so we can be full of grief at the passing of the pet or something along those lines. That was kind of Zeus or Jupiter's relationship to mankind. They didn't live for very long, and you were the custodian of them. You took care of them, and they brought you great delight, and they taught you things about love and affection, but they weren't on the same level as you. And so Zeus, as I said, and Jupiter, let's now call him by his astrological name, the Roman name, Jupiter goes from a deity that, treated mankind like cattle, well, and to one that really treasures and values human company. And so this idea of coming down to earth is very Jupiterian. He's the one god who's always sneaking away from Mount Olympus to go frolic and play with the common folk. Okay, so Jupiter is always intrigued with what's going on with humankind, and that's why he has his messenger Mercury, listening in at different keyholes and things like that. He loves what's going on with mankind, and he loves what's being produced as civilization in mankind. This isn't a god that demands that everyone worship him and that's it. This is a god that's actively participating in the world that we live in. Okay, and this is how Jupiter goes from being just a god of fertility associated with storms and rains and bringing water and things that replenish and cause things to grow, into actually being active in the progress of mankind or humankind civilization that it's creating. So in many ways, Jupiter is a very humanitarian planet. It's a planet that really cares about people and in bettering people, making people better. And so when you get to this idea of Leo, which is being the best person that you can be, remember that you were born under a zodiac sign, or if your rising sign is Leo, you believe in being the best person that you can possibly be. No zodiac sign places a greater value on individuality and on making a personal difference in people's life than Leo does. And by being your own self, Leo creates that in other people. It's an aura, it's a radiance that you have. When you're true to yourself, other people feel like they should be true to themselves too. You set the example for individuality and for individual expression and creativity, as well as individual nobility and individual responsibility. These are the things that are important to Leo, and these are the things that are important to Jupiter. Remember what I said earlier, Jupiter is a planet that's very much connected to our morality and our moral values. Jupiter believes that there is good and bad, and that you want to do good, and bad is nothing but a corrosive effect. It brings people down. It soils society, so Jupiter really wants to be about that benevolence. And Jupiter also is a planet of faith. It's about it's a planet about belief. So when you have Jupiter in Leo, you believe in your own talents, you believe in your own abilities, you believe in the things that you know that you can do. An extra bonus of Jupiter in Leo, if you're born under Leo or you have Leo rising, is that you have that audacity, to proclaim what you've done and to be proud of it. You have that pride in standing your ground, and you have that willingness to stand apart and alone from everyone else, because you radiate this uniqueness, you radiate this individuality. And these are things that are really beautiful about Leo. But what Jupiter in Leo also will ask of you, it shows off your talents, it shows off your abilities, but Jupiter in Leo will only reward talents and abilities that you really have. Okay. There's always this little ironic twist with astrology. Okay. So the thing is, if you have a natural talent and ability, Jupiter will reward that. It will magnify it. It will show it off for other people to see. All right. And celebrate and emulate and you can be a rock star and they're singing your songs, something like that, right? If you don't have that talent, if you don't have that ability, but you have led yourself to believe that you do, or you think you do, or you should have it, okay, then Jupiter will show that, but not to a flattering way. Okay, so not all of us are born with talents that we think we should have, okay? We could be very talented in something. It could be very grand and larger than life, or it could be very simple and very humble. But sometimes we can think that we have a talent and an ability, And it's not really as much as we insist that it should be. And I'm deliberately using the word insist. You can not have a lot of talent, but you can develop it through skill. Okay. And a lot of people do that. And they actually go further than people with talent. Okay. Because the skill has been honing what they have and turned it into something more. But there can also be in our lives people who think they're talented at something or insist that they're talented at something because maybe they envy someone else's success or they think that they should have it too, or that's what they've decided on. And so the talent becomes an insistence. I insist that I'm really good at this. I insist that I'm really talented at this. And Jupiter in Leo can be very telling when it comes to that. I mean, when you have Jupiter in Leo, you're either going to make a great splash or you're going to make a great splat. It's going to be one of the two, and it's going to be public. So it's always a good idea to have a true understanding of what your talent is, of what you are bringing to the table, of what you're good at. Because what you're good at is something that's going to beget good in the world. Jupiter is always about begetting good. It's paying it forward. If you're good at something, then it has a good effect in the world. If you're not good at something and that you're insisting you are, because you should have had this, because someone close to you was better at this, or you envied them their success, that's not going to have that. That's not going to produce that result. Okay. And because it's Leo, it's going to produce a result that's very public and that everyone sees and may not be showing you off in your own light. So this is kind of my way of addressing what's almost like a sort of astrological statement that's made about Jupiter in Leo, or even a fire sign, that Jupiter will give an overly inflated sense of yourself, and beware Jupiter, because it's going to go to your head and make you narcissistic and full of yourself. Jupiter will do anything in excess. That's what Jupiter does. Just like Saturn will do anything in withholding and scarcity. That's what Saturn does. Okay, so it's not a value judgment. It's simply how the planet behaves. It's up to us to work with the way that the planet behaves. So this could be a period of time where you might be full of grandiosity. That can happen. I'm kind of doubting it because the Jupiter in Leo is forming trines to Saturn and Neptune. And one could make the case that Neptune can make one a little delusional, but Saturn, no. Saturn's basically, here's your reality check, and this is what you owe. Okay, so Saturn keeps you pretty sober-minded, pretty serious. And then, of course, there's the opposition to Pluto in the zodiac sign of Aquarius that's taking place right at Jupiter's ingress into the zodiac sign of Leo. And so Pluto in Aquarius will hold up a mirror to you. It's opposite, okay? And it will hold up a mirror. And Pluto in Aquarius can be very, this is the way the world is. I mean, you will, so it's going to be kind of hard to get, taken away with yourself or whatever with Jupiter going through Leo, because Pluto in Aquarius is going to be holding up a mirror. You will see how your actions reflected in the faces of your audience. Okay. They're either like, huh? Or they're applauding you. It's one of those two things. And so that's where kind of Pluto in Aquarius is going to keep you honest during this period of time. But what's so important is that you believe in yourself to the full capacity that you can believe in yourself. Jupiter is about fulfillment. You have something to fulfill in your life, a higher calling, something that you're drawn to during this period of time. You've probably already felt the higher calling with Saturn and Neptune and Aries, but Jupiter in your sign is going to give you the wherewithal, the resources to answer that higher calling and to embody that higher calling. But the Pluto opposition is going to keep you pretty honest about it. Okay, so again, you have morality versus karma. Okay, so Jupiter, when it's in your own sign, it's luminous, which is wonderful, but morality can turn into things that rationalize behavior that might not be the best that it could be. Okay, like I deserve this, or I'm a good person and other good people are successful and make lots of money just like me. Values can become askew with success. Jupiter in your own zodiac sign is fulfillment. It's the fulfillment of what's good in you, and that's what's recognized as good. It's like someone who, makes themselves go and be an accountant when they really should be a singer. Okay, this is the period of time where you give up being an accountant and become the singer, and the singer is recognized, fulfilled, and seen because that's your true talent. Okay, this is the beauty of Jupiter in Leo, particularly if you're born under Leo or you have Leo rising. So the demand is that you not only believe in yourself, but you also fulfill yourself. And that can get a little frightening. That can bring a lot of pressure. That can, make you sort of feel like Cinderella the moment after the slipper fits her foot and she's looking around the room and everyone's like looking at her, so it can bring that, but you need to fill that with goodness. You need to fill that with benevolence. You need to fill that with generosity. And that's something that if you're born under Leo or you have Leo rising, shouldn't be a very difficult thing for you to do during the period of time that Jupiter resides in your sign. If you're born under Virgo or you have Virgo rising, Jupiter in Leo is going to be good for you. Okay. Now, the reason I slowed down with the good for you is that I'm changing it from the idea which would be Jupiter in Leo is going to be good, like good for you. This is going to be a wonderful time when Jupiter is going through Leo, expect good things. Good for you is doing things that you don't feel comfortable doing, like eating your vegetables, like if you were ever told as a kid, although you're a Virgo or so chances are you probably ate your vegetables. But anyway, let's say you were told as a kid, eat your vegetables, they're good for you, or you're going through a rough time in your life, but it's good for you. It's character building. Okay. This is more the hue that Jupiter and Leo is going to be taking on. It's good for you in the way that you should go through this. You should experience this because it's going to be character building and it's going to improve you as a person. All right. Now, very quickly, let me add that we are not talking about Saturn here. Okay. Saturn is a planet of tests, trials, and tribulations. So Saturn can be character building because you come up against these challenges, these test trials and tribulations. You deal with loss or disappointment, and this builds the character. So, Jupiter in this particular position of being in Leo isn't like Saturn. It's good for you because Jupiter is getting you to try on things that you're not comfortable with. Okay. Being a Virgo or Virgo rising, what are you not comfortable with? Authority. Okay. Authority, which is something that Leo has naturally. Leo expresses a natural sense of authority, and people believe Leo when they say something. Okay. As a Virgo, you have difficulty with that idea of authority. Now, let's not confuse this with expertise. Okay. Virgo rising does very well with expertise. You make yourself good at something. Okay. Which is very specific. And is something that people find eventually indispensable. You're the expert. You're the person that people bring in, to show them how to do something or to authenticate something. That's more in the realm of a Virgo rising. But authority, saying, I want you to do this with the expectation that someone's going to obey you, that is not something that comes easily to a Virgo or a Virgo rising. And that's because Virgo is the zodiac sign of service. You put yourself at service to other people. Other people take on the authority in your life. So Jupiter in Leo is telling you to step into your own authority. Let's take a different example, but and a different context, but I think it's going to help make the point. Okay. Think of the last time someone said to you, you need to love yourself as a person, or you need to love the person that you are. Okay. Virgo risings are like, yeah, I need to love myself as a person. I need to love the person that I am. But then it's like, I don't see how I can do that. No, there's something about it that just seems too sentimental or too cloying or too inaccurate or just, uncritical or it just the idea of loving yourself as a person is something you'll recite, maybe as a mantra, but it's not something you might feel naturally comfortable with. All right. Your idea of that is actually doing good deeds for other people or being of service to other people. That's something where you really see your handiwork and your generosity and the good deeds that you do in other people's lives. Okay. Being good at a job, being good as an expert, fulfilling a role. These are things that Virgos see as being of value to others. And so they derive value themselves. What the Jupiter in Leo is doing, because it's in that part of your solar chart that's a very sensitive angle, it's called the 12th house in astrology, is that the Jupiter in Leo may be making you feel like you need to be more of an authority, and then you may be experiencing a bias that comes along with it. Maybe it's all authority figures exploit the masses and put their foot on their throat, and you're never going to become that. Or maybe authority is vainglory. It's in love with myself, and I stop being a humble person and I become full of myself, and it's vainglory, and I need to get rid of that, like a spot on a shirt. Out, damn spot. Out, vainglory. Because modesty, so connected to Virgo. But what they meant by modesty was humility. And so that might be something. So there's something, you may have certain biases, not around Leo as a zodiac sign, but around Leo as a zodiac sign. Okay. You might have certain biases around Leo as a zodiac sign, like they're full of themselves or narcissistic, or, they're so self-important or pompous or something like that. And you may rule your life with a very stiff yardstick, demanding that you never become like that. You will never become proud or pompous or full of yourself or something along those lines, because the 12th house can represent our undoing and what we're afraid of becoming that would create our undoing. And for you, that might be having an ego, or having having an ego. I'm just going to say it. That might be something that you make sure that ego never gets out of control. It never becomes unmanageable. It's kept, being humble or learning or obeying or acting properly, So this period of time when Jupiter is going through Leo, it's going to sort of be letting your egomaniacal side out to play. And this isn't because Leos are egomaniacal. This is more that if you've kept a part of yourself suppressed for a long time, and 12th house can deal with things that are in the closet, like suppressed or hidden away. When Jupiter's coming through this, and this particular sign is Leo, it may bring out an ego in you that is appalling, but you can't help but find enrapturing at the same time, or attractive, or forbidden fruit, or what would happen if I did become an maniac, And so there's a kind of sense, because Jupiter's in Leo, playing with fire, are you going to lose control of that humility, of that modesty, that you practice in your life? And again, it's not like you're prim or proper. What it is that Virgos practice humility and modesty because you don't become a target. If you blend in to the background, or if you're of service to someone, not only are you doing good deeds for others, but you're making yourself indispensable to other people, and you're not a target. It's the people who sit on the throne who are the targets. Okay. It's the people who are out there in front, governing over people. People can be behind you one day, but let's say the next day they aren't behind you, then you can be deposed, you can be thrown out. And it's the Virgos who are making damn sure that never happens to them, that by becoming an expert or well-trained in a certain area, or master of a niche, having found your niche and become invaluable, this is how you make yourself invaluable without calling too much attention to yourself, because attention can make you disposable. The crowd can go against you and you become disposable. And that's something that Virgos work very hard to not have that happen. So this Jupiter in Leo may be bringing out more of your ego side, and that's good because it shouldn't be something that's like shadowed in your life. It shouldn't be something that you repress or whatever. You need more of a sense of fulfillment, and you need more pride. You need more like, yeah, I made that happen, and I want to be recognized for it. And the Jupiter Leo will make you recognized for it. Okay, so you don't have to be like, I need to be recognized for this. It's just you're going to be recognized for it. And so I want you to sort of practice that during this period of time that Jupiter is going through Leo, where you're being recognized or appreciated. Don't change the subject or poo-poo it or put it down or say, it's not really me, it's what I did with all these different things. Don't walk people through the method of your work. They're not interested. They wanted to simply praise you. Try turning to them and saying, thank you, and owning that you're good at something. Because when you do that and people feel comfortable praising you for something, they're going to praise you more. And also, it's okay for you to be an authority. It's okay for you to celebrate who you are, to be proud of who you are and what you do. You will always be of service. This is something that you take pride in. And it being recognized and valued is always a good thing. And it's something that you've probably been longing for and needing for a very long time. And during this period of time of Jupiter going through Leo, you're going to be getting it. And it's going to work as a perfect preamble to Jupiter entering your own zodiac sign of Virgo on July 27th, 2027. If you're born into Libra or you have Libra rising, all I have to say about Jupiter entering the zodiac sign of Leo is, hallelujah! It's about time. It's about time you got a break in the cloud cover when it comes to the skies that you have been living under. Jupiter in Leo is going to be fantastic for you, and for a couple of different reasons. One of the reasons is that Jupiter traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo will be in a fire sign. And a fire sign creates a natural sextile to the two air signs that are bookending it. Okay, so in your case, Libra forms a natural sextile to Leo, which basically is anything good that happens to Leo is going to happen to you. Now, a sextile is an unconditional support. That's what you have when you have a trine. That would be a planet going through an astrological sign that shares the same element that you do, the air signs, for instance. And currently you are enjoying trine energy from Uranus in the air sign of Gemini and Pluto in the air sign of Aquarius. So that's a good thing. But what the Leo does is that it brings a little bit of fire to the situation. Air has a tendency to focus really on relationships and the people in your life. Indeed, if you're born under an air sign like Gemini, Libra, or Aquarius, your greatest resources are your human resources. So what you do for the good of other people, is also done for the good of you. You all share in the benefit. You all share in the goodwill. But what Jupiter in Leo does, because Leo is very much a zodiac sign about the self, it's kind of like the heart, as in the heart of the matter. What Jupiter in Leo does is that it gives you an extra large slice of dessert. Okay, that's just for you, special. All right. So where Librans can get a little heavy on the egalitarianism, because all air signs have a tendency to be like that, Jupiter in Leo is going to show you a little bit more favor. You get a little something extra because you are you, and it celebrates the specialness of you. This is something you could really use nowadays after years of that eclipse cycle that was going through Aries and Libra. And when did that start? I think it was like October of 2022. Okay, there was that eclipse cycle that was harsh, and then it was followed on the heels of that of Saturn going into your opposite sign. There's been a lot of feeling like a house divided cannot stand in your own life. A lot of opposition, a lot of difficulty in trying to hold things together, and it's been tough. It's been difficult. But certainly the modern planets this year, with moving into the air signs, have helped to abate that, have helped to build bridges where there was divisions before. But what's also nice is that sense of being personally recognized. Now, this is something that Libras enjoy. They like being personally recognized. You're born under a Venus sign, for goodness sake. So you like being personally recognized, but you're often recognized on the arm of someone else or in partnership with someone else. So you sort of have to share that with another person. Okay, because Libra is the zodiac sign of relationship, and it rules over spousal relationships as well as professional partnerships and collaborative partnerships as well. And so what happens here is that with Jupiter in Leo here, you get to razzle dazzle a little bit more on your own. Okay, you might still be on the arm of someone, or you might be known, through someone else's name or because you partner with someone, but you get to stand out a little bit more on your own. And this is a really nice thing. Another nice thing is that the Jupiter in Leo forms a trine to Saturn and Neptune, which have been opposite you in the zodiac sign of Aries. So it breaks up that opposition, and it gives that oppositional energy a bridge to cross over. And it gets you to basically, as I was saying before, not only get the recognition of being special, but also it gives you support. People might be, revisiting previous opinions that they had of you, revisiting previous judgments that they had of you. It's okay to have a little bit more me in your we in your life. Okay, the air signs are very we oriented. And the fire signs, you take the W and we, you turn it upside down and make an M, and you get me. Okay, so the fire signs are very me oriented. So with Jupiter being in Leo and forming a sextile to you, there's less of having to share it with someone else and more getting to enjoy it for yourself. So this is wonderful and something that you deserve after really what have been a challenging number of years for you. The other thing that happens here is that Jupiter in your solar horoscope is in its joy. Okay, it's traveling through the 11th house in your solar horoscope. And the 11th house is where the planet Jupiter rejoices. It takes its joy here. And so what this does is that this connects you to people who can advance your own interests. They might be patrons, they might be mentors, they might be coaches. They might be friends of friends who could do something for you, and so they're going to make introductions. They may take you under your wing. They may champion your cause. They may say, I'm going to introduce you to this Libra rising person, and I don't have to even, toot the horn for them. Let them show you what you could do. So people might be saying, hey, I've made this introduction. You show everyone how great you are and how wonderful you are. Jupiter in Leo is all about showcasing the natural talents that you have. Jupiter in Leo celebrates me, self, but it's not just egotistical self. It's your individuality, your talents, your abilities, your special gifts. These are things that Jupiter in Leo celebrate. And sometimes that we can devalue, that we can put on the back shelf, that we could have taken a job that pays the rent or the mortgage instead of following a path that really exhibited and expressed our talents and abilities. Well, there's kind of a reconciliation that takes place here. It's when Jupiter is in Leo, you are becoming recognized for what your true talent and ability is. And this works as long as you are acting from that place of authenticity, as long as you are being genuine in your talent and ability. If you're being true to your talent and ability, it will be showcased and championed during this period of time. The downside is if you are insisting you have a talent, or you're insisting you have an ability that you don't truly have, but you feel like you should have, because maybe you're jealous of someone else, or you've tried really hard at this and you've worked all these years and you should have this talent, and if that talent or ability isn't there naturally, it's not going to grow. It's not going to show you off during this period of time. So it would actually be a good time to let that go if that's not your true talent or ability. People often think that when they have to do something like that, that means that they're untalented. No, what it means is you were getting behind a talent which didn't come naturally to you. And maybe it's time to get behind a talent that does. There are several biographies of people who, were musicians, but found their true calling being biochemists, like their true talent was that. Science allowed them to be, or that sort of mathematical mind allowed them to be good musicians, but where they really excel or flower is in biochemistry. So it's finding the thing. You're not finding a thing when Jupiter is in Leo. It's acknowledging, accepting, and recognizing in yourself the thing that is your flower. It is your talent. It is your virtue. It is the thing that really raises you in the estimation of others as well as yourself. And so the Jupiter in Leo is insisting that you have faith in that you believe in that it's time to stop putting a bushel over your light, that you come out from under that bushel and that you show off who you are, as long as it is connected to who you really are and not someone that you think you should be. And this can be a little bit, when we're dealing with air and fire, because the fire signs are going to say, well, this is who I am. This is who I've always been. Okay, that's it. Whereas the air signs can get a little bit along the lines of, well, this is who I should be, or this is what is expected of me, or this is something that, this was an ideal that someone had always held for me, and now I need to prove that I can do it. If you're doing things from the outside, being outside yourself, and you're trying to generate that authenticity from that, Jupiter and Leo will not help you. Jupiter and Leo will highlight that, and by highlighting that, ask you to reform, to change that vision that you had yourself in exchange for who you really, really are, and to live from that genuine place. So although you have a lot of things that are going for you during this period of time, that Jupiter in Leo is also saying to you, you need to inhabit who you really are and not this idea of who you are. And this is something that you will be learning about and delighting in during this period of time that Jupiter is transiting through the zodiac sign of Leo. If you're born under Scorpio or you have Scorpio rising, this period of time that Jupiter is in the zodiac sign of Leo is going to be a bit of a challenge for you. The reason I use the word challenge is because Scorpio forms a natural square to Leo. So Jupiter in Leo is going to be squaring. It's going to be in some sort of adversity with your own zodiac sign. Now, squares are often described as being combative and difficult, and that's because squares are of the nature of Mars. But what it's really about is that squares kind of have this one-upmanship that's going on. You can have a Scorpio point of view of who you should be and what you're about and how the world should work. And then Jupiter in Leo is going to introduce the Leo point of view of who you are and what you should be and how the world should work. And it's not going to be on the same page as Scorpio. Now, at first glance of Jupiter and Scorpio, this looks like it should be an absolutely wonderful year for you. It's certainly going to be an important year for you. And that's because in your solar chart, which is what we use to do these forecasts, in your solar chart, Jupiter is traveling over your midheaven. It's traveling over the highest point of your own solar horoscope. And Jupiter up here is usually associated to triumph. It's associated to success. It's associated to you reaching the top of what it is that you have worked so hard to reach and being recognized and rewarded for it. Now, Jupiter is returning to that part of the sky that it was in 12 years ago. And so 12 years ago, from this date, which is Jupiter entering Leo, June 30th of 2027, 12 years ago might have been a period of time where you had reached a similar summit of success and a similar place of success, of accomplishment, of achievement. But because the skies were so conflicted at that period of time, you might not have gotten the full force of Jupiter in your life. You might not have gotten, let's put it in simpler terms, you might not have gotten the full payout of what you would put into something. And that's because there were certain misalignments of planets that were going on during that period of time. During this period of time, that is not happening. Okay, Jupiter is in friendly aspect to planets that are the slowest moving planets in astrology, which are going to be your modern planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, as well as Saturn, which used to be the slowest moving planet until Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto were discovered. So what's going on here is that the Jupiter in Leo is forming trines to Saturn and Neptune in Aries. It's forming a sextile to Uranus in Gemini. And then even though it's opposite your modern ruler, which is Pluto at the base of the chart, and we'll get to that in a moment, it's still forming trines and sextiles. And so if you could sort of think of a pinball machine, with the ball getting bounced around different points, that opposition of Pluto to Leo isn't a pure opposition because it's being broken up by a sextile to Saturn and Neptune in Aries and a trine to Uranus in Gemini, which sextiles the Jupiter in Leo. That's a lot of astrology that I just laid on your plate there, but basically what it means is that Pluto is not being oppositional in a pure way, that it's working in conjunction with, and I mean conjunction meaning in alignment with these other planets. And so this is good. What this is going to be bringing up, though, are all of your feelings about success and fulfillment. Okay, we expect success to bring us fulfillment. That's what we think. We work long and hard to get to a certain place in life, and once we get to that place in our life, we're going to be fulfilled. We're going to have everything that we wanted to have. And anyone who's experienced success on that level, any sort of success, and most of us have, if not all of us, some measure of success, we get to a point where we've achieved or accomplished something, and it's great, but it's kind of like it doesn't really bring everything that it should have brought. There are still bills to pay, people to please, and lemons to turn into lemonade. Okay, that's still going on no matter how much of a success you could be. You can become a big star and people adore you, but how much do they really know you? Not really. They know you as in film or a song or something like that, or politics. They don't know you as a person. And how much do they care about you personally? Maybe not that much, because you need to be, this great songwriter or great artist. And that's something that they praise and maybe on another day may target and make fun of. So success doesn't always bring all of these things that we think it should bring. Can success be fulfilling? Yes. But Jupiter is more about fulfillment than it is the success. It can be success, but if it's success just like a worldly success, that can leave you hungry or vulnerable. But if it's success which is matched with fulfillment, that you are fulfilling who you are, then whatever the degree of success, it's wonderful because you've fulfilled who you are. You're living according to your life purpose, and you enjoy what you do in your life. Gives you great joy and it gives you great pleasure. So the great question that's going to be going on here with Jupiter opposite your Pluto is, have you become a success at the cost of something? Did you give up parts of yourself on the way up the ladder? There are several movies and stories and songs that are all about that. So did you give up parts? Did you trade away parts of yourself to get to where you are? That might be one concern that's going on with you right now. Another one may be like, I've become this success and is that all there is? Like the Peggy Lee song, like I've always wanted to go to a circus, she sings, and she goes to the circus and she sees the acrobats and the lions being tamed and all these things. And she turns to her father who took her to the circus and says, is that all there is to a circus? So there can be sort of denouement, or there can be a kind of disappointment that follows on that. But if it's really registering with your higher purpose, okay, and higher purpose isn't getting back at someone or showing to the kids who laughed at you in the third grade that you're now this superstar. That's not higher purpose. That's vengeance, but if it's connected to your higher purpose, then it's your joy. And it's the joy that you're experiencing in your life. So if you feel, and this can play out in a different way, if you feel during this period of time that Jupiter is transiting over your midheaven, like there's a success that you should be and that it feels far away, and how could I possibly become that? Then that's a Pyrrhic success. That's something that doesn't belong to you. It's something that's there to torment you or offers an empty promise to you. It gets back to some of what I was talking about with some of the other zodiac signs. Jupiter in Leo is about you being who you are, right? Jupiter in Leo is about you being who you are and fulfilling who you are. If you have a talent or an ability that comes naturally to you, this is something that will be rewarded right now. But if you have a talent that you think you should have had, or an ability that you insist that you're better at than you really are, this will not be a good time for you, because Jupiter in Leo rewards authenticity. It lifts authenticity to its highest level. And so if your aspirations have been true to who you are and your talent and your ability, you will be celebrated. If they've been based on envying someone else or feeling like you should have had this, or that position should belong to you, then it will be empty. It will not, you may get it, Jupiter's still in the 10th house, but it won't fulfill you. It won't make you feel like you've arrived. And so that's something where Jupiter in this position is really sort of testing. I'm reluctant to use test because test is such a Saturn word. It's like a touchstone. It's seeing if you are morally aligned. Okay. And what I mean by moral is that, have you acted in good conscience to get to where you are? Is this going to be a true celebration of you because this has been a natural organic development of who you are? If it has not been that, then it could go south very quickly. And that's because Pluto, as I said earlier in the forecast, is associated to karma. Okay. So Jupiter is your morality in the moment, your choice in the moment to be good or bad, and then Pluto is the karmic points. This is all of your actions being added up. Okay. And karma is usually talked about in terms of our next incarnation, but Pluto kind of brings that up in this life. Pluto is basically what goes around comes around, and so if you've tried to turn yourself into something that you're not, it's what I was saying before, it will not work out that way for you. Whereas if you're working in conjunction with who you are, it will. But sometimes it takes a Pluto-Jupiter opposition to sort of bring that message home, for us to see, I've been struggling to become something that I'm not really, because of other people's expectations or expectations I'm levied on myself. And now it's time to leave that and to be the real me. That's where the opposition can be tremendously liberating and also fulfilling. It can do that for you if you're working in that kind of a spirit. And of course, if you're working in alignment with who you are, and what you're about, and you're working from what you value in your life, then this can become not only a tremendously fulfilling period from June 30th to July 27th of next year, but it will be a tremendously rewarding one as well. If you're born under Sagittarius, or you have Sagittarius rising, Jupiter entering the zodiac sign of Leo is going to be absolutely spectacular for you. Now, first of all, you have the benefit of being born under Jupiter. Jupiter is your ruling planet. And the way that I work with a ruling planet in astrology, it's not the way that most other astrologers work with it, but the way that I work with it is that your ruling planet is your patron saint, your corporate sponsor, your den mother, and your life coach all wrapped up in one. The ruling planet is the planet that rules your birth sign. Other people would say final dispositor, ascendant, things like that. I'm only saying this to sort of distinguish how I work with it. So if it works for you, great. And if it doesn't, dump it. But anyway, the way that I reference a ruling planet is the planet that rules over your own zodiac sign. So you were born under Jupiter. You were born under a planet that values fortune and higher purpose. Okay. And being a Sagittarius, you're going to want good things to happen in your life, and you also are going to want those good things that happen in your life to be connected to a higher purpose. So even though Sagittarians might say, hey, when am I going to win the lottery or something along those lines, you still want those winnings or those rewards to be connected to your higher purpose, to take you to a higher place in your life, to give you a sense of what your life is all about, to give you a sense of meaning. And you learned a long time ago that good fortune can be meaningless, that you can have wonderful things turn out for you, but if they don't bring fulfillment or a truer sense of you than you had before, then they're kind of like empty calories. They don't really do anything for you. So you're born under a planet that deals with those ideas and which also honors and values things like faith and belief. So when you're born under Jupiter, that doesn't mean that you're going to have good fortune and higher purpose every day of your life. What it means is that your sense of good fortune and higher purpose goes through ups and downs, ins and outs, as it travels through the 12 zodiac signs. There are going to be certain signs that you do better in, where your Jupiter does better in, and so it helps you. And there are going to be certain signs where it doesn't do very well at all, or certain signs where it just sort of like falls into an empty crack. Okay. Kind of like if you've ever seen those Instagrams where, the lamb goes and it jumps into a crack in the ravine and it gets stuck with its back legs dangling up, and the shepherd goes and takes it out and it's free and it runs around and it jumps again and ends up in the same thing. I mean, sometimes fortune can turn out like that. So the good news about Jupiter in the zodiac sign of Leo is that Leo is a fire sign just like you. That means it trines Sagittarius. And a trine is unconditional support. All right, so whatever planet is moving through a zodiac sign that trines you, trine is basically two or more signs that are different from one another, but they share something in common, which is the same element. So you can have 3 signs that trine in fire signs. And the fire signs are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. So with Jupiter moving into the zodiac sign of Leo, that means it's forming a trine to your own sign, Sagittarius. What that means at the end of the day is it's bringing all sorts of good things into your life. So this is wonderful. It's back online, shall we say, with good fortune and higher purpose, that you're going to be experiencing good things happening to you that bring a sense of higher purpose and also bring some sort of prosperity or remuneration. It's good for you and you enjoy it. So this is a time of potential reward and definitely a time of fulfillment. Now, right now, if we look at your solar horoscope, Jupiter is traveling through that part of your solar chart, which is associated to the 9th house in astrology. Now, it's often said that the 9th house is Sagittarius's house, and actually the 9th house isn't. The 9th house represents higher education, long journeys, God, and good government, those sorts of things. And it can be institutionalized religion or institutionalized government. It's things that protect and also benefit you in terms of your spiritual life and even perhaps your material fortunes. Those things are all associated to the 9th house. But in the archetypal chart, that became connected to Sagittarius, which is why people say, oh, it's Sagittarius's house, but it's not. The 9th house represents those things that happen to be the same values that Sagittarius shares, okay? Which is, you are philosophical. You do fall in love with faraway places and you want to go and journey and travel and see them. You take community as being very important. Whatever faith you follow or spiritual quest you follow means a lot to you. It could be something that's an institutionalized religion, or it can be something pagan that has nothing to do with an institutionalized religion, but that search for divinity, that search for higher meaning, a higher purpose is something that's really important to you. So during this period of time that Jupiter is going through the zodiac sign of Leo in this place, you are going to be feeling called to a higher purpose. You're going to recognize it. You might have spent some time, looking around for that burning bush with your name on it, wondering when you're going to have this encounter that's going to change your life and mean something to you. And this is going to happen during the period of time that Jupiter is traveling through Leo. Now, you might find a burning bush or, something may speak to you out of nowhere, but I think it's going to be more like your intuition is online, your sense of like, my life feels really purpose filled right now. Like there's a higher cause that I'm serving and I can name it, I can see it. And that's really what I want to be involved in. I want to bring good to the world in this way. You were born under the planet of goodwill. Jupiter is a planet of goodwill. It believes that by doing good things, you make the world a better place. It's not really more complicated than that. And that when you do bad things, you make the world a worse place, and it's not going to be based on reward or punishment. It's based on your conscience. Did that act make you feel good or bad? When we act in goodwill, we feel good. Okay. And people smile. And that's a wonderful thing. And the world is a better place. When we don't act in that way, we don't feel good. We start rationalizing it, explaining it, saying, well, this is what the person deserved because they did this to me and all these sorts of things. And it becomes even more divorced from what is a good act or what is an action that was right to do. You were born under a very moral planet and you were born under a very moral sign. Sometimes, yes, if you've got Sagittarius or Sagittarius rising, you can, experience a little dose of exceptionalism. Sagittarius and Sagittarius rising has never said no to being lifted up and above a rule and having that not apply to them. But at the end of the day, you were also born with a conscience. And you know that like everyone else, that there are rules and laws to follow. And if you don't define them strictly as a rule or law, there is your moral conscience. There is your relationship to whatever is divine in your life. And that has to be squared away like that. And so this is something that Jupiter in Leo is going to inflame in you. It's in a fire sign and you're a fire sign, so you're going to see this. And it's something that's also going to extend your reach as a person. It trines you, so you're getting support to go beyond what is comfortable or familiar or something that you're used to doing. And you're extending your reach. You're saying to yourself, I can be a better person, or I can rise to the occasion of my higher purpose. Or maybe I have to even leave the things, that I've secured in my life because it's not doing it for me. I've got to be me, which is Jupiter and Leo. I have to follow my true calling. So the true calling could call you away from the things that you find comfortable, or the true calling can emerge in which you feel like, oh, at last I see what my life has been about. I can see, where all of this has been leading. And now I'm going to bask in that luminosity. I'm going to bask in that feeling of, I'm going to revel in the revelation. So these are things that could be happening during this year. Now, you might find yourself in some way impatient with your circumstances, that Jupiter is opposite Pluto, which is in the solar third. So you might find yourself impatient with the circumstances, or like circumstances are holding you back. And I wouldn't be surprised if you did a total breakout of something, where you're just sort of like, this isn't my lifestyle. I don't want to honor these circumstances. I'm being pinned to a board like a butterfly in a collection by obligations and responsibilities. And I'm going to break out of this and leave all of this. And that's something you're going to want to be careful with during this time. Jupiter is a moral planet, so it's about doing good, and not doing harm to other people. That's simple. That's not hard to figure out. Pluto, what Jupiter is opposing, is more of what we call a karmic planet. And Pluto takes the long view of things. Jupiter, because it's got a shorter orbit around the sun, takes a shorter view or a more immediate view of things. Whereas Pluto, because its orbit is so long, it could spend anywhere from 12 to 32 years in a sign, as opposed to Jupiter, which spends 1 year in a sign. Pluto takes the longer view of things. And so it's more associated to karma in regards to the fact that it's adding up all of the actions that you've done in your life to see if you're good or bad. So Jupiter might focus more on this one action or decision or crossroads or quandary that I'm facing. Whereas Pluto, being named after the god of the underworld, is taking into account all of the things that you have done. Now, karma is a notion that I think all of us are relatively familiar with. It's your good actions that you do in this life and how they're going to shape your next incarnation. But with Pluto, karma is a little bit more fast acting. It shows up in this life now. So it's basically what goes around comes around. Okay. So if you've done good, there will be good. And if you haven't, you will be feeling that during this period of time. And again, it's not to punish you because we're still under the benevolent aura of Jupiter, and Pluto is showing a kinder face as a result of sextiles and trines. So it's not something where you're going to get your comeuppance. The Jupiter-Pluto opposition, in the way that it's going to work for you for the next year, they oppose at the ingress. So Jupiter carries that energy with it throughout its stay in Sagittarius because Pluto was one of the first planets it aspected as it entered the sign. What's going to happen during this period of time is that you will be given an opportunity to reform, to mend your ways. Okay. If you ever watched or performed in Godspell, like turn back, old man and mend your foolish ways or something like that, And so what you have an opportunity here, because Jupiter is so much about reforming, okay, turning away from what's been bad. If you feel divided against yourself during this period of time that Jupiter is traveling through your sign, if you feel like you didn't do everything you could have done, okay, like you knew what the true action was, but you held back a little bit, maybe out of self-interest or probably more convenience. Or if you walked out on obligations and just said, I've got to be me and I don't care about you, okay, Pluto's in Aquarius. So your actions have to align with the lives of other people. Aquarius is an air sign, so it's about good relationships with people. If you do any of that, you may find that doesn't lead you to a good place. But during this period of time, you'll have an opportunity to reform, to rethink it, to make up for it, to mend your ways, which can be very Jupiterian. So that's available to you during this period of time. But wouldn't it be so much better? Wouldn't it be so much better to act from a higher self, from a place of generosity, to see how your goodwill creates and promotes goodwill in the world, that you can win and accomplish and fulfill and succeed at things, but that your winning and that your accomplishment and that you're fulfilling also helps those people who are around you, those people whose lives you affect, whether it's just a passing acquaintance or someone you see every day. The beauty of Jupiter is that it's a benefic. It is an agent of goodwill. And the simple lesson is do good unto others, and good will be done unto you. And it's not reciprocity. It's not like, oh, I did a good thing for you, and what am I getting back for it? It's more like, I did a good thing for you, and I made the world a better place. And so I've created a chain reaction of people paying it forward, of people doing good things to other people. So become that. Embrace the mission of your ruling planet, Jupiter, traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo from June 30th to July 27th of 2027. Not only will you experience the blessings and the virtues of Jupiter in this placement, but you will also yourself become the agent of good fortune and higher purpose in the lives of the people around you. If you're born under Capricorn or you have Capricorn rising, this period of time that Jupiter is traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo might be a little bit hard for you to get a handle on. It might be hard for you to really get a good solid grip or understanding of. And that's because Jupiter is traveling through a zodiac sign that doesn't make a Ptolemaic aspect to your own. In other words, Jupiter won't be conjoining your sign. It won't be opposing your sign. It won't be squaring your sign, trining your sign, or even forming a sextile to your sign. What Jupiter will be doing is forming what's called a quincunx to your sign. And a quincunx is basically the relationship of non-relationship. Now that sounds rather fancy, but what does it really mean? What it means is that Jupiter is trying to find a fit with Capricorn, but it's not really succeeding at creating that fit. Imagine, if you will, that you have your smartphone, okay? And you're traveling through a part of the country or an area where the signal is that weak. Instead of full bars, it's down to one bar and maybe even fading at that. And so you're trying to make a phone call or carry a phone conversation on with your smartphone, but it's getting interrupted. The signal is dropping. It's not coming together. Okay, so that's kind of how a planet forming a quincunx to your own zodiac sign works. The signal isn't strong. It's fading. It's being dropped a lot. Okay, and one would think, okay, the most practical solution to that is to, wait until you come into an area where you've got full service again and where the signal's going to be picked up. But what happens with the quincunx, because it can be so frustrating, is that you keep pressing redial over and over and over again in hopes of talking to that person, and once again, the signal drops, even though it's going to drop, it doesn't come through, and you just keep pressing redial. Well, that's kind of really how a quincunx works. It's not a fit, the signal isn't coming through, but then it's not an acceptance of that. You're still going to try to force a fit or try to make something happen that makes that energy come through. So as you can imagine, it's just as frustrating as what I just described. Now, what's going on here is really interesting because we're dealing with Jupiter, and Jupiter has a lot of history with Saturn, which is your own ruling planet. These were both sovereign gods. They have a father-son relationship, and Jupiter overthrew Saturn in order to become king of Mount Olympus, or Zeus becomes king of Mount Olympus, and Jupiter takes over the Roman pantheon. He overthrows Saturn in order to do that. So Jupiter basically can be like about youth and vigor and overthrowing anything that's old and tired. It can represent those things. But more importantly, Jupiter is a planet of faith and belief. And that is the opposite of your planet, which is a planet of doubt and of questioning. Okay. So people with strong Jupiter in their charts feel most comfortable when they have faith and belief in something, and that faith and belief is stirring their life. And people who have strong Saturn in their charts feel more comfortable when they're questioning conventional wisdom, when they're doubting a truth that's being fed to the masses. There's that sense of like, I don't want the wool to be pulled over my eyes and I'm not going to fall for this. And that can be very much a Saturnian point of view. So when you have Jupiter traveling through a zodiac sign like Leo, you're going in search of that faith and belief that you're not sure you're going to accomplish or achieve. The interesting thing about Saturn-ruled signs, whether it's Capricorn or Aquarius, is that you're closet optimists. Okay, it's not something you lead with, and it's not something that you're going to make known, but you actually do believe in being optimistic. The Saturn is in service to the optimism. Okay, so in other words, questioning and taking apart something is in service to building something better. Not believing in something better or selling yourself on something better, but building something better, which is always the mission of Saturn in a horoscope, among other things. So what's going on here is that you're trying to connect to a belief and a faith in yourself that you're having some trouble connecting to, all right? But that's not going to stop you from trying to connect to it. Now, what adds to this picture is that Jupiter is traveling through a part of your chart, of your solar horoscope, that is not an easy part for you to access, which is called the eighth house. And the eighth house in astrology, I will often describe as being sex, death, and other people's money. It sounds like a 1980s, CBGB rock band, right? Or punk rock band, rather. And it deals with those issues that are very tender or very sensitive issues. Sex, for all of its openness and liberation, is still very much a sensitive or tender issue. It can make someone feel very vulnerable, and it can make someone feel humiliated, or it can make someone feel possessed by a passion or an obsession. I mean, sex can be very powerful, not in the ways that one might initially assume. Okay, death is always kind of like a conversation ender. It's kind of like, someone starts talking about it, it might bring an end to the mood or spoil the mood. But, interestingly, increasingly, it's becoming much more conversational. People are very interested in death, or the passage that's connected to that with the, I think it's the doula movement is what it's called, And then other people's money is what you owe other people, or what other people owe you. What do all of these things have in common? What they have in common is that they can bring up experiences of mortality, brushes with mortality. Okay. Sex is a life force. Okay. But it's also a life force that can get out of control if it's, been affected in some way that can be negative, or if it has negative results, if it takes on, for instance, a more predatory element, or where you're feeling preyed upon, or sex is being used to control or manipulate your behavior, that's happening. That's where sex can take that on. But it's certainly associated to mortality because it's so much associated with life, but it can also become very dangerous and very negative. When we have an association with death, like a brush with death, or maybe we lose someone, or a beloved pet, or a beloved friend or lover in our life, we can suddenly feel very vulnerable. I think that's what I'm going at. It's that theme of vulnerability. Sex can make you feel very vulnerable. A brush with death or mortality can make you feel very vulnerable, like something bad could happen to you and that could be it. And certainly owing other people money can make you feel very vulnerable or beholden or under the heel of someone else. So these are things that can come out with the eighth house, among other things. And so it can make you feel like you don't want to be beholden, and that can actually inspire behaviors that might make it worse. Okay, so that, in other words, for me not to feel beholden, I'm going to go in the opposite direction and avoid that. But by going in the opposite direction and avoiding that, it can make it worse, or I might even stumble headfirst into what I was trying to escape, which is the entire story of Oedipus Rex. Okay, so this is what's something that can happen with the eighth house. It can spook and get you to do things to avoid it, get around, or prevent. And those things can actually make it worse. So when you've got Jupiter traveling through this part of the chart, and it's not available to you in a Ptolemaic aspect-y way, okay, what can happen, you have to have faith that you'll find faith. All right. So you're not looking for something that's going to like sell you on faith or be this big thing. But what Jupiter's asking you to do is to extend your reach in terms of faith. To perhaps what I'm really trying to say is to take things on faith, and that your faith is something that can help you as you're going through a period of time in this following year that may trigger certain fears or anxieties in you. All right. So at first it's kind of like, well, what benefit am I getting out of Jupiter and Leo? I'm not getting the good things that Jupiter's supposed to bring. I'm not getting these benefits or rewards or things like that. What I'm getting is what I'm used to as a Capricorn or a Capricorn rising, the short end of the stick. Okay. But what it is that you're facing situations in your life that might create frightened or anxious or running away responses. And Jupiter and Leo is giving you a courage of faith. It's saying you can face this. It's not about and facing it and conquering my fears. It's not like that at all. You can face this. You can have faith in yourself as you face these fears. They might be actual events that happen, or they may be your perceived, or your perceptions of events happening, the way that you're reading a situation. Jupiter in Leo is trying to bring you to courage, to faith, to belief, in being a better person. You're kind of going at it in a weird way because of the quincunx energy. It's being done more by being put in situations that trigger these responses, but it's in the triggering of the responses and maybe the prayer that you say, or maybe the way that you settle your nerves, or the way that you center yourself, or the affirmations that you feel in your surrounding environment. These little things give you the faith. They rekindle the belief. They bring the joy as you go through this. So again, I'm by no means saying you're going through a dark time. What I'm saying is that you may be going through a triggering time, a time that triggers these things in you that you've lived with for years. And now's a time that you're being asked to have faith in who you are and to be true to who you are as you go through this. And by embracing that energy of the Jupiter and Leo going through such a sensitive angle of your horoscope, you may see things that used to frighten you or overwhelm you become infinitely more manageable. And in that way, that may reassure you in a way that you've never been reassured before. And it may inspire a faith and a belief in yourself that you've always been looking for. And during this period of time, you may very truly have found. If you're born into Aquarius, or you have Aquarius rising, this period of time that Jupiter is traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo is a period of time when it will be opposite you. It will be as far away from you as it can possibly be on a 360-degree circle. All right, so what this means is that it is in the polar opposite camp from you. Okay, so the Jupiter isn't available for you to be close to. It isn't available for you to access. It's not a coat that you can put on. It's a coat that's been separated from you by a store window and a cost point, a price point that's been put on it. Okay, so it's out of reach. Okay, and so this is basically how Jupiter begins its stay in Leo and what your experience of it will be. So if Jupiter is supposed to represent good fortune and higher purpose, it's beyond your reach. You can't reach it on your own. And that's a very important thing to keep in mind for this year. You cannot reach it on your own. But that doesn't mean that you can't work with other people to reach it for you. In other words, if you're at a dinner party and the salt is at the opposite end of the table, it might be out of your reach. You can't get up out of your chair and grab it. You have to turn to a neighbor and say, would you be so kind as to pass the salt? And the person is like, okay, and they go and get it. And it's, passed down by maybe 2 or 3 people to you. And finally you consult what you have. That's the best way to look at Jupiter in Leo. It's out of your reach. You can't get it, but you're going to be asking other people if they could pass it to you. And that's probably the best way that I could describe how this opposition energy working in concert with sextiles and trines is going to operate in your life. Now, a lot of things have been changing since Pluto first entered your zodiac sign in 2025. All right. So there's a lot of things that have been changing. Maybe certain things have come to an end or a close in your life. Maybe you've made some tremendous decisions which have moved you in a direction that might have been as unexpected as it is something that feels fated for you, and so you're moving in a different direction in your life. And so when Jupiter in Leo is representing, as I said, good fortune and higher purpose, and it being out of your reach, what I mean by that is that it's not something that's going to be accessible in the familiar ways, in the time-honored ways. It's something where you're going to have to be working with other people to understand. And this is interesting. And actually, to me quite ironic about Aquarius is that Aquarius is an air sign. So you're all about relationships and people and friendships with people and understanding people. But at the same time, because of your dual rulership of Saturn and Uranus, there's a sense of always feeling like an outsider. So you want to be surrounded by people, or you're very people oriented in your life, but there's always a part of you that feels like an outsider, like you're not accepted, like you're not truly understood, like you don't really belong. And so that Saturnian quality of not really belonging and of having an anxiety around rejection, because what Saturn will do, and Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius, what Saturn will do is cover up anything that shows a trace or a reveal of rejection, but you're very sensitive to it. You kind of can hold people at arm's length, or keep them at a distance, keep them at arm's length. That becomes augmented by the Uranian rulership when you start talking in abstract ideals and ideal societies, or the way that things should be, these kind of abstract systems or abstract designs for living. There's a tendency to talk more in there along those lines and feel comfortable there than on one-on-one intimacy with an Aquarius, because there's always this fear like you don't belong, or you'll be rejected, or you're not bonding in a way. The Jupiter in Leo is going to highlight this, okay, because it's opposite you. It's going to highlight this, and it's going to show you that there's this kind of ravine that's between you and where you want to go. But the bridge to be built is through the people who are coming into your life over this year. And they're going to be very dynamic people. They're going to be very Leonine type of people, very Jupiter Leonine type of people, maybe larger than life personalities, or very dramatic, or very sure of themselves, or very confident, or very well known. And so you may feel like, I'm not that, or I can't keep up with that, or whatever, but they may recognize in you, or the likelihood is that they're going to recognize in you that you are like them, that you're an equal or a peer, but you don't really know it. Okay, now this can have a good effect and a not so good effect. The good effect is, imagine meeting your idol, and your idol, signing their autograph and then looking at you and saying, you know what, let's go out and get a drink, because, I just feel this bond with you, and let's go and share these things. And suddenly you've been like picked out of the crowd, and, you go off and this is great. The idol recognizes it, sees you as a peer, as an equal, not as a fan or anything like that. But then the reverse of that is that someone could see in you themselves, but they haven't made really great decisions about themselves. And that's something that they might be projecting or imposing on you. Maybe someone who you admire, lives a very Sturm und Drang life, and, where they're well known, but they're also reckless or mean to people or something like that. They may impose that morality on you by saying, this is what you need to be in order to get to where I am. And, you pretend to be nice, but I know that you're not. I know that you're naughty. And, they might sort of give you that Mephistophelian, wink or giggle or chuckle and say, don't be so uptight and nice or whatever. You're really, reckless and wild and self-serving like I am, type of thing. So it can take on one of those two things. All right. And what you want to do is be the judge of who you want in your life. Okay. Is this person bringing out the best in me, or is this person bringing out the worst in me? Now as an Aquarius, you might be like, oh, I can tell, but you're in a time of fluctuation and change. You're in a time of transformation because Pluto is in your own zodiac sign. So the old rules don't apply like they used to. And you're not in totally a new rule type thing, but the old rules and the old landmarks don't apply in the way that they used to. And so this can be very exploratory and encourage you to explore, and that's a good thing. But it can have the flip side, which is you may not be aware of where you're being led or seduced into. You might not have that ability to recognize that because you're not dealing with the same game board that you're used to playing on, or the playing field that you're used to playing on. So keep that in mind, and be guided by the fact that Pluto is in your own zodiac sign. I said earlier in the forecast that the difference between Jupiter and Pluto is that Jupiter is more moral in the moment and Pluto's more karmic. And to sort of like ground that a little bit more, Jupiter's more like about what's right or wrong. And, am I listening to the angel on the shoulder or the devil on the opposite one? And Pluto being more karmic, karma is about, or the general understanding of karma is that your life is judged on the actions you've taken in your life. And that will set up your next life. Okay. So if you led a life of debauchery, that will lead into your next incarnation. Or if you've led a life of charity, that will lead into your next incarnation. So, it's the difference between being reincarnated as an insect or being reincarnated as a noble person, type of thing. So, but basically what I really want to get at is Pluto's a little bit more in this life rather than the next life. So Pluto's really more like, it's the idea of what goes around comes around. So if you do good acts, that comes around and makes the world a better place that you're living in. And if you do not so good acts, that comes around and bites you in the derriere, type of thing. So because you're coming from a Pluto place, which is taking the long view of your actions, you're going to have an ability to recognize if someone is being morally true or not, if you're being used or exploited or not. Because the good thing about an opposite planet is that you can see it and you can understand it. But what's going on here is, who do you want to form these relationships with, that you feel will better yourself, but are they being formed out of choice or circumstances or necessity? So those are the things you're going to be examining during this period of time. So in some ways, you're going to be able to judge this for yourself, but in other ways you aren't. And that's good, because that opposition to Jupiter, Pluto-Jupiter opposition, isn't a true opposition. It's being broken up by sextiles and trines. And this brings in the people that you're meeting along the way who are going to help you to achieve or get on with the new chapter in your life. And so these people may see things that you don't. They may recognize things that you don't understand, or they may pose questions that you never even thought of articulating. So again, pull on the fact that the greatest resource for any air sign are your human resources. Let that help you to judge the alliances or partnerships that you're getting involved in. And if you always keep at hand your moral compass, then you will avoid the krakens and the whirlpools, and you will definitely head towards the destination that you seek, and the one that will prove to be the most promising and fulfilling. If you're born under Pisces or you have Pisces rising, Jupiter in the zodiac sign of Leo is going to be really interesting for you. It's actually a very complex placement. First of all, because it's going through a part of your solar chart that deals with work and service, putting yourself at service to other people. And Jupiter is in Leo, and Leos aren't necessarily people. Leo people or Leo rising people don't really see themselves as being in service to other people. They sort of see themselves as giving the orders to other people or being served by other people. So it's a curious position for the Jupiter and Leo to be showing up in the house of work and service. So that's curious. And then the other layer that's being introduced here is that the period of time that Jupiter is in the zodiac sign of Leo, it's forming a trine to your other ruling planet. Your traditional ruler is Jupiter, but your modern ruler, your co-ruler, is Neptune. So Jupiter is entering Leo, which is a fire sign, and it's trining Neptune, your modern ruler, in Aries, which is a fire sign. So there's a trine here. So there's something about being of service to others, which is going to bring your life purpose and meaning. It's going to be something in which you find faith on belief in yourself or perhaps humanity by being of service to it. Now, being a Pisces or a Pisces rising, you might be like, well, that's not hard to do. I see myself as being in service to people all the time. But there's a difference between being of service to people and sacrificing for people. Pisces kind of understands sacrificing more, okay? Or that's an easier concept to wrap your mind around, sacrificing, making sacrifices for someone you care about or someone that you love. This is something that Pisces can understand and often does. But being of service to someone means that you're helping that person to be a better person, okay? And that's based on you being a better person. So where sacrifice can lead in the direction of a selflessness, giving up things, abstaining or sacrificing, giving away things, this is actually a little bit of a reverse, or coming at it at least from a different angle, which is the more that you fulfill, the more that you are true to yourself as a person, the more you will be of service to other people. So for instance, let's say you're dealing with a friend who's going through a rough time and they don't see how they're going to get through it. And let's say you react in a way that would be very natural to Pisces or Pisces rising, which is to be very sympathetic and very supportive and very there for the person. What might not be as natural for you is showing a confidence or even a fearlessness in a situation that's fraught with so much anxiety and fear. Okay, so as a Pisces, you might not naturally be sort of like bold, like I'm looking at adversity and difficulty straight in the eye. You might be more kind of like, this is a rough time and let's get through it together and I'm here for you and tell me what's going on. It might be more supportive in a watery way than it is bold and fiery. Jupiter is your ruling planet. So with Jupiter being in Leo, Jupiter is saying to you, you need to take on the attributes of Leo during this period of time, okay? You're ruled by Jupiter, which is the planet of good fortune and higher purpose. And when you're ruled by Jupiter, you are going to have experiences of good fortune and higher purpose in your life. As a Pisces, that might be material or it might be immaterial. You may have more of the experience of good fortune, like things turning out well for you, rather than producing lottery tickets with winning numbers or something along those lines. So as a Pisces, you tend to be more experiential and more soulful in this. With Leo, there's a sort of self-centeredness that people born under Pisces or have Pisces rising don't really share, okay? Pisces or Pisces rising is often referred to as being selfless or without an ego, which I've always found hard to believe because Jupiter is about that belief and it's about that faith. And where Leo is the zodiac sign of kings, Pisces is the zodiac sign of emperors, okay? People who have media empires or tech empires. I mean, Steve Jobs was a Pisces, Rupert Murdoch is a Pisces. These people ruled over entire empires and they collected kingdoms like cereal box tops. So there's a larger than life quality to Pisces. It's not quite the demure, the self-sacrificing sign that sometimes astrology books make people born under Pisces out to be. But that sympathy and that care and that compassion is something that's very, very strong in you. What's not always strong in you is this idea of being a solid, strong, forceful personality, okay? And this is what the Jupiter in Leo is asking you to do. The Jupiter in Leo is basically saying, to begin with, the best way to be who you are is to reassure people on who they are, okay? So it's not just being reassuring and comforting, it's saying, it's good to be like this, or you've got this talent, you've got this ability. Praising someone, recognizing in someone their potential, their ability, recognizing their Leo-ness. And the more that, and what I mean by Leo-ness is their uniqueness, their individuality, how they make a difference. And when you do this to others, you get a sense of that being strengthened in yourself. Pisces can sometimes be oceanic, like, I'm not special, I'm not different, I'm open to anything, I'm a citizen of the world or the universe. But Leo is, no, you're a person, you inhabit a body, you have a lifespan, you have responsibilities, loves, obligations, fun, taste, whether it's good or bad. You're a person, you occupy space, you inhabit this world. And so the Jupiter in Leo insists that you place a higher value on that for the next year. And that when you recognize that in other people, or you're in service to people, recognizing and utilizing their potential, realizing their potential, by doing this, you're doing the same with yourself. So it may seem strange that you might, over the next year, be seeking the company of people who are more messed up than you are. I mean, I'm not saying you're messed up, but people born under Pisces or Pisces rising have a tendency to see themselves as messed up. So you may be meeting people who are more messed up, than you, but this has the reassuring effect of getting you to express your own personal leonine qualities of warmth and guidance. So basically, how it's working here, and it's a bit of a ricochet effect, is that the more you instill confidence in others, the more you instill confidence in yourself. Okay. So supporting confidence or helping people to realize their potential, the more you do it for others, in the act of doing that, the more you're doing it for yourself. And this is following a theme of the Neptune in Aries of being present. Aries is very much a present tense zodiac sign. So it's being present. And then the Jupiter in Leo is bringing in yourself, who you are, which people born under Pisces or Pisces rising can be a little bit squeamish about, because they have a more fluid sense of the self. And the Leo has a more, stamp of authority, stamp of authenticity, sense of self. So the more that you instill these leonine qualities of confidence and bravery and presence and uniqueness of self, the more it becomes strengthened in you. And the more that happens, you become more present in your life. You don't have to worry so much about setting up boundaries or taking or being an emotional sponge or anything like that. This Jupiter in Leo working with the Neptune in Aries is making you present, so that it's not even about having to justify things. You just are, so that's going to bring a real sense of yourself that I don't know if you've ever felt it before, or if you have, it's been a very, very long time. And the more that you sense that fire in yourself, the easier it will become for you to bask in the glow of who you truly are. If you enjoyed what you saw, please press the like button. It helps more than you know. If you could subscribe, that would be wonderful. I've had such a wonderful time visiting with you this week, and I can't wait to get together next time on Christopher Renstrom Astrology.